If you like the story, you can support the author on Patreon. Link is in the description.
Chapter 21, Evolving. Clang. The sharp edge of a sword clashed with a silver scabbard in midair, creating a resonant sound of metal collision. In the narrow courtyard, two figures wrapped in wind collided with each other, causing the surrounding airflow to become chaotic under the friction of the wind. Riesel charged recklessly at Ace, his slender sword rising and generating numerous arcs of light, slashing toward the girl. Clang, cling, clang, cling. Successive collision sounds echoed throughout the courtyard. Facing Riesel's relentless charge and merciless slashes, Ace effortlessly danced with her scabbard, deflecting all incoming flashes of silver. Wind collided with wind, sword clashed against sword. The exchange between the swordsman and swordswoman appeared equal, yet one continuously attacked while the other never took a step back, an ongoing spectacle. Keen observers could discern who held the advantage in this battle. Regardless, Riesel felt as if he were facing not a person but an immovable mountain. No matter how he sprinted or swung his sword, he couldn't shake his opponent. However, confronted with this formidable opponent, he felt no fear. Instead, his blood boiled, while his eyes sparkled. Yes. He enjoyed it. He enjoyed fighting a strong opponent. He enjoyed the urgency, where any mistake could lead to death at any moment, a battle on the brink. Driven by this mentality, he unleashed all his strength. Clang, cling, clang, cling, clang. The collision sound seemed even more intense and never-ending. Riesel maneuvered around Ace, launching a variety of attacks towards her slender figure. Blade lights and sword after-images appeared from all directions, slashing towards her entire body. There was a forceful cleave aimed at her back. A vertical cut targeted her ankles. A sudden thrust aimed at her shoulders. A direct cut towards her abdomen. Riesel showed no signs of holding back or avoiding vital points. Each slash he swung seemed as if he intended to kill Ace for real, with every strike carrying tremendous power and lethality. Unable to make a dent in the powerful swordswoman without pulling out all the stops, he understood the gap between them and believed that she wouldn't succumb to this degree of attack. So he attacked with full dedication. Ace, in response, didn't disappoint him, standing there motionless, effortlessly deflecting every one of his slashes with her scabbard. The girl didn't just parry with her scabbard, she used various straightforward techniques to neutralize his attacks. Facing a forceful cleave towards her back, she swayed her scabbard from the side, skillfully deflecting the powerful blow with minimal effort. Against a vertical slash aimed at her ankles, instead of dodging, the girl lifted her foot and kicked his sword grip, robbing it of strength. A thrust targeting her shoulder was blocked by the scabbard, emphasizing finesse over force. Though the attack was threatening, it was easily parried. Even the attempt to cut her abdomen had no effect, the scabbard rebounded the strike, sending it back, causing him to lose control and step back. Gradually, Ace shifted from defense to offense, using the seemingly harmless scabbard to leave marks on Riesel's body. Her scabbard swung at an incredible speed, while the attacks were sharp. Even without aid from the wind, each strike created a howling gust, hitting him hard. Unable to track the scabbard's trajectory, Riesel abandoned defense, focusing all attention on relentless attacks, turning his slashes into arcs that became faster, fiercer, and deadlier. Watching Riesel, who seemed like a cold and ruthless sword demon, relentlessly attacking Ace, those in the manor witnessing the scene through the windows couldn't stay calm. "Are you kidding me?" Tiona murmured unconsciously. Wasn't he a rookie who recently received a blessing? Tioni wore a disbelief expression. "Hey! Loki, you fool!" Even Bet, who returned to the window without anyone noticing, stared at the intense battle below. Angered by what he witnessed, he shouted in Loki's direction. "Are you sure that brat was just an ordinary guy who got blessed a few days ago? There should be limits to joking." Not only Bet but Finn, Riveria, and Gareth were left speechless, one after another looking towards Loki. "A rookie?" Gareth said doubtfully. "With this skill and ability, he's already an expert even in level 1. Indeed, Riesel's displayed strength surprised everyone, defying the expectations of the Familia's first-class adventurers who initially only wanted to gauge the rookie's potential. Shit, Loki scratched her head tiredly. "Just as I thought, it's gonna be like this." Evidently, the reactions of her children were within her expectations. That kid's damn growth speed, it's strange not to surprise other kids who are growing at an ordinary pace. Loki recalled the events from last night. Last night, after Ace agreed to Riesel's request and promised to teach him her magic, he didn't immediately leave. Instead, he sought Loki's help for the third status update. Riesel Brynhart. Level 1. STR, F385D555. End, F380D548. Dex, E431C623. AGI, E449C637. Mag, I0. The total proficiency points in all basic abilities had risen to over 700. In the third status update, Riesel's growth speed remained astonishingly rapid and ridiculous. Especially in Dex and AGI, both had entered the crank. This was something even adventurers who had worked hard for several years in level 1 could not achieve. As mentioned before, those who could develop basic abilities to a rank were extremely rare, and those who reached S rank were even rarer. Upgrading to Brank was already considered a genius, and there weren't many in Orario. Yet, Riesel achieved cranks in 2 basic abilities in just 3 days. Due to this fact, Loki spent the night yesterday doubting her own existence, not to mention others. And if others were in such a state, let alone Ace, who faced Riesel Hedon. Ugh! Ace's golden eyes stared at the continuously attacking Riesel, her pupils slightly contracting. In his perception, she was an immovable giant mountain, but in her perception, he seemed like a constantly evolving pupa, seemingly small but gradually growing wings, turning into a moth flying towards the flame. In terms of basic abilities alone, the current Riesel had surpassed more than 90% of level 1 adventurers, becoming one of the top experts in level 1. With the enchant-type magic Ariel bringing about an increase in basic abilities, he had comprehensive improvements in attack, defense, speed, and more. As long as he didn't encounter opponents at level 2, he could handle them with ease. Of course, that kind of strength was almost negligible in Ace's eyes. As the universally recognized strongest swordswoman with the strength of a first-class adventurer, Riesel was not impressive in front of Ace, who had been a level 5 adventurer for 3 years. However, through Loki's words, Ace also knew that Riesel was just an ordinary human who received a blessing just 3 days ago and had never received a blessing before. To possess a strength equivalent to an experienced expert in level 1 within 3 days? This fact stimulated the deepest part of Ace's heart, surprising even herself. Even more surprising for her was that, with their ongoing battle, Riesel was still evolving. Specifically, he seemed to have found the key to controlling Ariel, starting to enhance the wind on his sword or directly detonating it under his feet to increase his attack speed and movement speed. He had truly become a gust of wind, swiftly approaching. Moreover, as time passed, his sword became sharper and less chaotic, becoming somewhat familiar to Ace. Is he learning my swordsmanship? Ace's heart shook uncontrollably. She was correct. Riesel was indeed learning her swordsmanship. Is this how I should swing a sword? In the continuous attacks, his eyes reveal strands of enlightenment, changing his sword movement step by step. Becoming simpler. Becoming faster. With exceptional memory, Riesel observed Ace's movements carefully, noting every technique she used, and relying on his inhuman growth speed to reproduce and master them. This was an unexpected harvest. Riesel, who originally only wanted to learn magic from Ace, only realized this at this moment. I should learn not only magic. I should grow not only in status. My combat skill, combat technique, also need learning and growth. In his previous life, Riesel had only learned taijutsu for self-defense. So, where did he learn combat techniques used for actual fights, especially sword technique? No, he hadn't learned at all. But now, he had the opportunity to learn. The changes and transformations that he had undergone in Ace's eyes were no different. Too fast! Ace exclaimed in her mind. He's changing way too fast. Her realization caused flaws in her seemingly flawless movements. Right there! Riesel's eyes suddenly lit up, capturing these subtle imperfections. Clang! With her seemingly effortless slash, Ace retreated. An opportunity. Riesel instinctively realized that this was the only opportunity in this battle that could pose a threat to her. Without hesitation, he aimed straight at Ace's exposed chest and thrust his sword forward. Chapter 22, Doubt. Everything came to a standstill. Time was frozen. Ace gazed at the sword tip thrusting towards her chest. Her pupils, which had already contracted, narrowed even further. Ace! Someone suddenly screamed Ace's name in panic. Upon hearing this voice, Ace finally snapped back to reality. Her pupils, which were about to shrink to the size of a pin, suddenly burst with vivid colors. Boom! A burst of wind wrapped around her body, transforming into a powerful shockwave that sent everything around her flying. Riesel felt an overwhelming force coming from the front and was instantly blasted away, crashing into the courtyard wall. Arg! Riesel couldn't help but cough out all the air from his lungs as his back stung with pain. The wind surrounding his body dispersed upon colliding with Ace's wind, so he endured the wave of the wall impact with his body directly, causing intense pain throughout. "Are you okay?" Ace exclaimed and hesitated for a moment, an unusual hint of concern appeared on her face. Not just her, but even the onlookers were startled by the sudden turn of events. "Something's wrong!" Tiona shouted in a panic. "Wrong my ass! It's all your fault! Why did you scream?" Tiona slapped Tiona hard, scolding her sister. The one who had screamed Ace's name earlier was Tiona. If it weren't for her scream, Ace wouldn't have instinctively used her full strength. "I only saw Ace almost getting stabbed. I couldn't help but scream, okay?" Tiona rubbed her throbbing forehead, tearfully defending herself. "You dumbass Amazonas!" Bet immediately cursed. Ace used magic and had wind protection. How could that guy's sword possibly hit her? Indeed, even if Ace hadn't unleashed the full force of her wind to repel Riesel, his attack would likely not have caused any significant damage. The protection of Ariel would shield the user's body. Even if Riesel's sword had hit, it probably would have been blocked by the wind. So, Tiona's scream was completely unnecessary. "I'm sorry." Tiona seemed to realize this too, muttering awkwardly with a hint of guilt. "All right, stop staring." Finn interrupted the argument. "Let's check on the rookie's condition first." With that, Finn jumped directly out of the window, completely disregarding the fact that they were dozens of meters high. "These brats, why are they so impulsive?" Gareth scolded while following suit and jumping down. Meanwhile, Riveria had already descended ahead of them. Seeing this, Bet, Tiona, and Tioni followed suit, one after another, jumping from the window into the courtyard. Only Loki remained, with one leg on the windowsill, appearing as though she was about to jump. However, upon realizing the ground was far below, her mouth twitched. Feigning nonchalance, she quietly retracted her leg. "Meh, forget it, as long as Finn and Riveria are there." Having sealed her arcanum, Loki wisely avoided the fate of landing like a box right then and there. One after another, Loki Familia's executives entered the courtyard, gathering around Riesel. "Are you okay?" Riveria was the first to approach, helping Riesel up while placing a hand on his body, seemingly checking something. "I'm sorry." Ace also came forward and apologized while looking at Riesel, who was standing unsteadily. She lowered her head, full of disappointment, resembling a child who had done something wrong. Even Tiona apologized by gazing at him with eyes full of regret. Cough. Cough, asterisk. Riesel coughed a few times, took a deep breath, felt the pain in his chest diminish, and then looked at the people present. "I'm fine, no need to worry." Riesel shook his head. His words made everyone observe his expression for a moment. After confirming that he was indeed okay, they all sighed in relief. "That's good." Finn seemed like he wanted to pat Riesel's shoulder but found that he couldn't reach the shoulder. He gave up and laughed. "Luckily, the wind helped you offset some of the impact. Otherwise, you might have to stay in bed for a few days. You kids really went overboard." Gareth, with a disapproving look, snorted coldly. "A little sparring is fine, but actually going all out? Do you want to kill or injure your Familia companions?" "Indeed," Riveria said with wrinkled brows. "Ace, your reaction was too intense. You should reflect on it." Ace's head lowered even further, her expression more dejected. "It's not her fault." Riesel, now fully recovered, defended her. "I wanted to spar with Miss Ace myself, and her counterattack was only natural." "Even so, you guys went too far." Tioni sighed. "Seeing the way you looked like you wanted to kill Ace just now, I almost thought you were seriously fighting to death. Really, it reminded me of some unpleasant memories back home." Yet. Tiona nodded repeatedly, agreeing. She had been genuinely scared just now, recalling some unwelcome memories. Hence, if they wanted to blame someone, it was mostly Riesel's fault. Immersed too deeply in the battle, and too trusting in Ace's strength, what should have been a more casual spar gradually turned into a serious fight. It could be said that he brought it upon himself. "It's my fault," Riesel admitted with self-awareness, knowing he had been too aggressive. Seeing Ace's dejected expression, he quickly reassured her. Please don't blame yourself anymore. After all, it's my fault. You were just defending yourself, and you didn't do anything wrong. Hearing his words, Ace nodded, but there was still a hint of dejection on her face, making him feel a bit guilty. However, before he could fully console her, Bet's voice interjected. For such a trivial matter, what's there to fuss about? Bet stared at Riesel intensely, resembling a lone wolf intimidating something. I'm asking you, brat, did you really just receive the blessing 3 days ago? With his question, everyone turned their attention to Riesel. The still dejected Ace, who seemed particularly focused on this topic, also raised her head and looked over. Riesel was momentarily surprised by the question but quickly understood what was happening, so he nodded. Yes, I received the blessing 3 days ago. His statement was met with Bet's blunt rebuttal. Who do you think you are fooling, hey? Bet spoke with his usual foul mouth. You trying to tell me you've grown this much in just 3 days? I ain't buying your bullshit. Bet's skepticism was obvious. He didn't believe Riesel could progress so quickly, and that was perfectly reasonable. Judging by your recent performance, even without considering Ace's magic you used, logically speaking, you should have at least 1 or 2 basic abilities at Drank, maybe even Crank. Finn calculated precisely, pondering Riesel's status. At least Drank basic abilities, possibly not just 1. Gareth speculated aloud. Man, when we reached this stage, it took us nearly a year, right? The fastest among us should be Ace. Riveria glanced at the doll-like girl. But even Ace took about half a year back then. Tiona exclaimed with surprise. Doesn't that mean he surpassed Ace's efforts in just 3 days? With her statement, everyone fell silent. Especially Ace, who stared intently at Riesel, seemingly particularly concerned about this topic. Riesel could only bask in the various intrigued looks from everyone, inwardly smiling wryly. He certainly knew why everyone reacted so strongly. After all, even Ace took so long to reach this stage initially, let alone others. Achieving such results in just 3 days was undoubtedly hard for people to accept. Ace was the world record holder for the fastest advancement to level 2. At the tender age of 8, it took her just a year to level up to high-class adventurer successfully. Her innate skill was nothing short of being the best in the world. However, Riesel displayed a skill that surpassed her by far and even surpassed it by so much that people found it hard to believe. But he himself didn't think much of it. After all, the protagonist only took about a month to level up successfully, and at level 1, every time his status was updated, total proficiency would increase by hundreds of points. What I did is nothing compared to him, right? Precisely because of this, when Loki doubted his own growth as godly, Riesel himself felt that there was nothing great about it. The things the protagonist could effortlessly achieve with cheat after cheat, Riesel only did the same. What's there to be surprised about? This world was also not the only one. In another anime world, faster growth and even becoming a monster who rises to the top overnight, would not be uncommon. Therefore, Riesel really didn't think it was a big deal, so he maintained his calm and composed attitude. You can go ask Loki. 3 days ago, when I received her blessing, my back was probably as plain as can be. She knows best. Upon hearing Riesel's reasoning, everyone exchanged glances and simultaneously turned, heading toward Loki's room. You come too. I want to see if this is real. The Amazonas twins each grabbed one of Riesel's arms and dragged him with them. Ace followed closely behind, with a determined stride. This made Riesel realize that his status was inevitably exposed. Chapter 23, Astonishment and Envy. Riesel Brynhart. Level 1. STR, D555. And, D548. Dex, C623. AGI, C637. Mag, I0. Magic. Almighty. Memorize magic. Activate specific magic based on memory. The strength of the magic is determined by the basic ability of mag. Only effective for valid magic. Skill. Fool's Obsession. Extraordinary increase in growth speed. Extraordinary increase in growth limit. The deeper the obsession, the stronger the effect. The effect is greatly enhanced in dangerous situations. Endless. Obtains the highest rank development ability Healing Power. Obtains the highest rank development ability Spirit Healing. Obtains the highest rank development ability Abnormal Resistance. Improve obtained development abilities. Self-Redemption. Immune to body interference. Immune to mental interference. The status can be updated independently by consuming the corresponding god's blood. Can accept and enhance the effects of friendly buffs on oneself. Riesel and every executive of Loki Familia were in Loki's divine room at this moment. Reading Riesel's status that had just been translated by Loki, whether it was the 3 top executives leading the Loki Familia or the executives like Ace and the others, all fell into a death-like silence. Riesel, brought here by Loki, exposed his status as he intended with her cooperation. The backbones of the Familia stared at the parchment held by Finn, looking at the ridiculous status on it, their breath gradually becoming erratic. Especially Ace, her gaze was almost fixed on the skill called Fool's Obsession, or rather, on the effect of extraordinary increase in growth speed. At some point, her hands had quietly clenched. Everyone could only exchange stupefied glances, their gazes frequently moving back and forth on Riesel and the parchment in Finn's hands, feeling their heads spinning. No choice. The amount of information brought by Riesel's status was too much for them, leaving them in confusion. Among everyone present, only Riesel remained calm from start to finish. As for Loki, her face wore a mischievous grin, enjoying the spectacle as she watched everyone's reactions. As you can see, this kid has incredible potential. Right from the get-go, he not only awakened 1 magic and 3 skills, but, whether it's magic or skills, they're all super unique and absurd. Loki spread her hands wide as she spoke. That's why this kid's growth speed is so fast. He only got a blessing from me 3 days ago, and before that, he had none, and I can vouch for that. As the goddess's words reached everyone's ears, they not only failed to shatter the silence but left them even more speechless. However, Riesel's standing in the hearts of everyone present was gradually becoming completely different. At first, I thought he was just a rookie with great potential, but did we seriously underestimate him? Finn chuckled. He knew very well that if Riesel truly possessed these exaggerated magic and skills recorded on the parchment in his hands, Riesel's existence would mean something significant. Not just Finn, even Riveria and Gareth, the oldest members in the Familia, were aware of this. Could this kid be the one who will shatter the legend of only one level 7 in all of Orario? Gareth's hushed words sent shockwaves through everyone's hearts. Level 7. This was something that had never happened in Loki Familia, a level that only one figure in all of Orario had reached even after searching far and wide. That person was considered Orario's ultimate weapon, a legendary character on par with ancient heroes, enjoying fame worldwide. Finn, Riveria and Gareth had been striving for that realm for who knows how many years, but they had yet to succeed. Even the genius members of Loki Familia, whether it was Bet, the twin sisters Tiona and Tioni who became level 5 at a young age, or Ace, the record holder for the fastest ascent to level 2, all of them were true geniuses with innate potential among the world's top characters. However, in the 3 top executives' eyes, the chances of these geniuses reaching level 7 were equally slim, with Ace being the only one with a somewhat plausible chance. But now, in Riesel, everyone saw the possibility of him breaking through that level. At least, the 3 top executives felt this way. In such a situation, he could no longer be described simply as a rookie with potential. He was clearly a supernova possessing the hero characteristic. Once again, everyone looked at him, their eyes filled with various complex emotions. TCH. Bet couldn't help but click his tongue, then turned around, walking away with an irritated pace. Where are you going? Riveria frowned and asked as she saw Bet's back. Dungeon. Bet replied coldly and strode away without looking back. Make sure not to spill the beans, Bet. Loki reminded with a mischievous grin on her face that never faded while her squinted eyes slightly opened. I've classified Riesel's status as Familia's top secret. Initially, I was only going to spill the beans to Finn. Fortunately, Riesel's cool with you guys knowing, so I'm lifting the ban on spilling the beans to you. Just be careful not to blurt it out carelessly, okay? Upon hearing her warning, Bet came to a halt. He knew well how crucial one's status information could be. If exposed to others, it could turn into a deadly situation if targeted, especially for someone like Riesel, with such outrageous magic and skills. If his information leaked, there was a 90% chance of attracting the attention of Loki Familia's enemies or falling prey to those with ulterior motives. Considering such possibilities, normally, details of one's status would be shared sparingly, even among companions within the same Familia, except for close relatives. Bet himself followed this principle, even within the Familia, very few knew all of his abilities. In Riesel's case, he should have been extra cautious about safeguarding his status information. Even among the Familia executives present, only Finn, as the Familia's captain responsible for coordinating all members, would need to know some details. For the rest, it wouldn't be surprising if they remained ignorant, regardless of how well the information was kept confidential. However, Riesel chose to disclose it to them. Despite Bet being a rather unpleasant senior, Riesel still chose to let him know his status. Realizing this, Bet was once again realized and astonished. Who would do such a stupid thing? Leaving a grumpy remark, Bet left the room more violently and impatiently. Tiona and Tioni exchanged glances and then turned to leave as well. Where are you two going? Riveria inquired helplessly. Dungeon. The twin sisters' responses were almost synchronized. Seeing even the Amazonas twins were leaving, Riveria sighed and pressed her forehead with her hand. Those kids just came back from an expedition yesterday. Today, there's a lot of work to be done with the loot, and yet they abandoned it all to go to the dungeon. What's going on? Goo-ha-ha-ha. They must have been stimulated, those little rascals. Riveria's sigh of resignation was met with Gareth's involuntary laughter, and he hit the nail on the head. Bet, Tiona, and Tioni were indeed stimulated. Stimulated by Riesel's inhuman potential. Stimulated by Riesel's rapid growth speed. Did they realize there's a monster chasing them from behind, worried their junior might surpass them? Loki chuckled, looking like she enjoyed the chaos she caused. You knew it would turn out like this, yet still intentionally make this happen, no? Finn looked at Loki helplessly. Well, isn't that great? Loki chuckled skeptically. Maybe this can bring new energy and motivation to those kids. Just thinking about it gets me excited. You gods always enjoy watching these unpredictable developments unfold, Gareth discontentedly remarked. Now, all the work of handling loot falls on us old folks. Can't those little rascals take care of the elderly? Well, since it's come to this, let them do as they please, Riveria said tiredly, shook her head, and then looked towards Riesel. It's tough for you to reveal detailed information about your status like this. Don't worry, despite Bet, Tiona, and Tioni seeming hasty and impatient, they know their limits. They won't casually expose your secrets. Her voice softened as she spoke to him. I know. Riesel calmly smiled at Riveria. Otherwise, I wouldn't have chosen to reveal it. Based on his understanding of the original work and familiarity with the important characters of Loki Familia, he believed that everyone present could be trusted. Even with Bet's shitty attitude, Riesel knew that deep down, he wasn't a bad guy, it was just a result of his difficult experiences that made him speak harshly. So, Riesel chose not to hide the details of his status. This decision was made with future development in mind. After all, he would inevitably need to seek advice from these Familia seniors in the future, asking them to guide him. Whether it was magic or combat skills, he had a lot to learn, and showcasing his potential like this, gaining the attention of Familia executives, was necessary. Loki seemed to see through Riesel, and doubts crept into her mind. This kid didn't have this attitude when he received a blessing 3 days ago. At that time, she thought he wouldn't easily integrate and mingle into the Familia. Who would have thought that once he recognized all of Familia's executives, he would start demonstrating his value? Quite clever. You can consult us anytime, it's okay. We'd be happy to guide a rookie with unlimited potential like you. Finn also sensed Riesel's intentions. Riveria and Gareth nodded in agreement. Thank you. Riesel bowed his head to everyone in gratitude. Unbeknownst to him, Ace, who had remained silent behind him, was watching him intensely. In her eyes, there was nothing but envy. Chapter 24, Pressure. The events that took place in Loki's divine room were known only to the executives of Loki Familia. But from that day on, members of Loki Familia were surprised to find out that, for some reason, the executives like Bet, Tiona, Tioni, and even Ace, who had recently become even more silent than before, were constantly running outside every day. The frequency of their appearances in Twilight Manor dropped drastically, with them ignoring the handling of loot and even skipping celebration banquets upon returning from the expedition. This puzzled many members of Loki Familia, leading to widespread speculation. Yo, what's the deal with them? Why are they running outside all the time? Is there some urgent business they're dealing with? I heard someone spotted them venturing into the dungeon before sunrise and not coming back until way past bedtime. Is this some spontaneous burst of determination? But seriously, why? The members were filled with questions, and some even approached the 3 top executives for answers, only to receive a more confusing response. They're just feeling pressure. Don't bother them, let them go. This was the consistent response from the three, leaving the Familia members who got wind of the information somewhat at a loss. Pressure. Do the executives feel it too? Who could be putting pressure on them? This was the most perplexing aspect. Unfortunately, the three top executives had no intention of explaining, just smiling and brushing off the matters, leaving the Familia members curious but unable to press further. Riesel also learned about this, and although somewhat surprised, he didn't find it surprising. As Loki had mentioned, anyone with a competitive spirit and ambition would feel pressure when chased by someone with a cheat behind them. Especially these executives, who were originally talented. They were not like the three top executives, who were older and more mature. It's natural for them to have some competitiveness and refusal to lose. In terms of age, the executives were quite young after all. For example, the Amazonas twins, Tiona and Tioni, despite being level 5 first-class adventurers, were only 17 years old, the same age as Riesel in this life. Ace, the strongest swordswoman in Orario, the record holder for the fastest ascent to level 2, was only 16 years old this year, 1 year younger than Riesel. Bet was a bit older at 22 this year, but compared to the three top executives, he was still a youngster. Finn, the seemingly young Palom, was already 42 years old, and Gareth was 56. Riveria, as a high elf with a long lifespan, was said to be only second to Loki in age within the Familia. No one dared to ask, fearing that a careless question might turn them into ashes. Compared to those three, Ace and the other executives were indeed young, explaining Gareth's complaints about them being restless and not growing up. In this situation, although Riesel was a rookie, he was in the same age group as the four executives. Given that, being seen as rivals was only natural. Even though Riesel was well aware that, if he counted the age from his previous life, he was definitely the elder among the executives, with an age only slightly younger than the three top executives in the Familia. However, in the eyes of outsiders, he undeniably appeared as a young junior. This greatly stimulated the competitive spirit among the group of talented boys and girls. Loki clearly knew this would happen, so she deliberately used me to stimulate them, right? Riesel understood this point but had no objections. It was normal for the god of Familia to want their children to work harder and progress further. If his joining could stimulate the talents in Familia to work harder, it would undoubtedly be a good thing. Of course, considering Loki's personality, that goddess probably also wanted to enjoy the spectacle for her own entertainment. For this reason, Riveria protested to Loki for a while, making the goddess laugh off the matter for quite some time before the tension eased. Riesel did hear Loki mutter something once. The only thing to worry about is Ace. That girl, if she gets too stimulated and does something reckless, I'll probably get my head knocked by Riveria's staff. Riesel took her muttering to heart. Because, he also noticed that since learning the details of his status, Ace's emotions seemed to become somewhat unstable. Originally not very good at expressing her emotions, the girl who seemed a bit aloof was often referred to as the doll princess, appearing silent and difficult to understand. However, after that day, Ace not only became even more silent but also returned home late and always dirty. When she saw Riesel, who came back in a sorry state every day due to exploring the floors beyond his safe ability, she was even more stubborn. Riesel found this intriguing. After all, he knew what kind of person Ace Wallenstein was and understood the wishes she held in her heart. I really want to become strong quickly. When he asked her to teach him her magic before, he had pinpointed that important line. His line could also be said to be a vivid portrayal of her innermost feelings. With the appearance of that line, Ace was moved and willing to teach him her magic. Therefore, he was well aware that the girl named Ace Wallenstein, like himself, was longing to get stronger, an unquenchable desire. If his growth stimulated her, leading her to act recklessly, he would naturally feel worried about her. So, he decided to talk to Loki about this matter. However, the goddess seemed completely unconcerned. Don't worry, we all know our limits. In Loki's divine room at night, Loki updated Riesel's status as usual and chatted. How much Ace does do crazy stuff, Finn and the others keep a close eye on her. It's not at the point where you need to worry. Her face showed no signs of worry, instead, she appeared relaxed. One hand slid on his back, and the other held a bottle of wine, drinking sip by sip until her face turned red. Are you sure you guys can handle it? Ignoring the drunken goddess, Riesel furrowed his brows as he inquired. Relax, relax, Loki laughed drunkenly. When it's really unbearable, the mama can't help but make a move to stop her. Does this mama refer to Riveria? Rizel raised a brow. Indeed, as the senior in Familia, Riveria showed a warmth that typical royal family members did not have, and her care for the juniors could be considered the greatest among the Familia's higher-ups. Like a mother, she watched over many people in Familia, especially Ace. She practically raised Ace from childhood, and there was almost no difference between her and her own biological daughter. Even toward Rizel, who had just joined Familia, Riveria showed a caring and loving side. Now, she was probably the one secretly paying the most attention to Ace's situation. If she judged that Ace couldn't continue like this, it was indeed possible for her to intervene. Yosh! While Rizel was lost in thought, Loki's relaxed voice rang out. Here, this is your latest status. She handed over the parchment to him, who took it and began reading. Rizel Brynhart. Level 1. STR, D555C678. And, D548C666. Dex, C623B772. AGI, C637B793. MAG, I0F314. TCH, another exaggerated growth spurt. Loki, gulping her drink, whether trying to drown herself in alcohol to numb the creeping sensation of Rizel's rapid growth or simply getting used to it, wore a grin. With a total proficiency increase of over 850, especially the growth in MAG, it's enough to scare any god. You've been using Ace's magic a lot lately, hey? Loki clicked her tongue in amazement. She had a point. In recent times, Rizel indeed focused heavily on practicing magic for the growth of MAG, making frequent use of aerial. And the results proved it to be a wise decision from the start. The ultra-short chant magic was very convenient and easy, with an activation speed of just 1 second. Unlike other magic that would lose its effect after a single blast, enchant-type magic's effects would last for a while, not immediately wearing off. During this time, Rizel was effectively using magic. Such frequent magic usage was naturally reflected in the growth of MAG. Coupled with the nature of enchant-type magic, which required him to charge into the front lines and engage in close combat even after using magic, it simultaneously worked as training for other basic abilities. He didn't lag behind in any aspect of improvement. However, the growth speed in other basic abilities has decreased, Rizel said with a certain uneasiness. Be content, kiddo. Loki rolled her eyes, speaking grumpily. Take a look at the stage your status has reached. If you don't slow down, I might start suspecting you're not mortal but some god's illegitimate child. As one approaches this rank, the growth of basic abilities naturally slows down. With Rizel having 2 abilities reaching rank, the growth of basic abilities slowing down was a fair and reasonable outcome. By the way, considering where you're at now, you're probably ready for a level up, yet. Loki glanced at Rizel, tossing out a question while holding her bottle of wine. What's your take? At her question, Rizel fell into deep thought. Chapter 25, Anticipation. If you asked an adventurer what change they anticipated the most in their status, their answer was likely to be only one level. It wasn't about obtaining magic or skills with peculiar effects, nor was it about a significant boost in basic abilities. It was about the evolution of body and mind, the increase in level. Especially for a level 1 beginner adventurer, leveling up was undoubtedly the most eagerly awaited thing. Because, from this step onwards, they truly embarked on an extraordinary path. Fauna existed as a catalyst for growth, an accelerator for getting stronger. In other words, it didn't enable those who couldn't get stronger to break their limits and get stronger. Instead, it accelerated the process for those who could continue getting stronger. It all boiled down to whether a person had the growth potential. If there was growth potential, Fauna could expedite the process by accumulating excelia to stimulate growth, becoming a nourishment for growth. Unfortunately, without growth potential, even with Fauna, one could not grow further. This was why people who could develop basic abilities to rank were rare, and even those at a rank and brank were scarce. Their potential was depleted, preventing any further growth. Accumulating excelia wouldn't increase proficiency even a bit. In light of this, despite the disparities in strength at level 1, people in this level still belonged to the realm of the ordinary. They could accumulate excelia to push their bodies to the limit of mortal but couldn't truly transcend and possess monstrous strength. Especially for mortals without any racial advantage, even if they pushed their bodies to the limit through training, at best, they could only shatter a rock. Could they really bring down a whole mountain? It was unattainable. The mortal body had its limits, no matter how one grew, one wouldn't become godly. But once they experienced leveling up, everything changed. The so-called body and mind evolution was just as it sounds, a genuine transcendence, officially entering the realm of superpower. Whether human or demi-human, even if they exhausted their potential at level 1, reaching the limit of their mortal body, once they successfully leveled up, a transformation worthy of being called body and mind evolution occurred. This transformation was not only evident in getting stronger but also in the vessel becoming larger and broader. After leveling up, the body transcended to another level, bringing forth new potential and possibilities. It gave a chance for those who reached a bottleneck, unable to progress, to have the opportunity to grow and get stronger once again. This was leveling up. As Loki had said, leveling up was approaching the level of the gods. The higher the level, the more frequent the transcendence, the more thorough the evolution of body and mind, and the closer one got to the gods. So, the phenomenon of leveling up could be seen as a step-by-step becoming a god. Who wouldn't yearn to level up? However, leveling up was not something that could be casually done. In general, to level up, you need to meet 2 conditions. Loki swayed the bottle of wine in her hand, intentionally or unintentionally remarking. One is to bump up one of your basic skills to the 6th rank, that is, drank. Second, obtain high rank Excelia by pulling off a remarkable exploit, mostly by defeating opponents stronger than yourself. The first condition provided a solid foundation for leveling up. If the basic accumulation was insufficient, it was like building a tall skyscraper on an unstable foundation. Even if you built upward, the only result was likely to be a collapse. Similarly, to achieve body and mind evolution, to bring about individual sublimation, it was impossible without a certain foundation. The second condition was to provide an ample supply of the so-called nutrients for leveling up and evolution. Just as ordinary Excelia could promote the growth of basic abilities and even awaken magic and skills, to level up, one still needed enough Excelia. However, at that point, the required Excelia was not something ordinary Excelia could satisfy. As Loki had said, it had to be high-rank Excelia. This kind of advanced Excelia was what Loki referred to as an exploit. That is, defeating opponents stronger than oneself. That is, taking life-threatening risks. That is, creating challenging endeavors that leave a lasting impact. Once these actions were accomplished, the recipient of the blessing would obtain more advanced Excelia than usual, achieving the so-called exploit. When the accumulation of exploits was sufficient, the evolution of body and mind would be triggered, allowing individuals to advance and enter higher domains. This was leveling up. Defeating opponents stronger than myself, hey! Riesel muttered and a smirk unconsciously appeared on his lips. Seeing him like this, Loki sobered up from the alcohol. Well, it seems this didn't just fail to scare you, but got you excited instead. Loki retorted speechlessly. Usually, when people hear they gotta take down opponents stronger than themselves, they'd be hesitating, maybe even freaking out, you know? But you're truly something else. Instead of hesitating or scared shitless, you're practically sounding the war horn for battle. Wasn't that the case? Fighting against opponents stronger than oneself usually meant having no chance of winning, right? No chance of winning implied a high possibility of death. Upon hearing that leveling up required such conditions, who wouldn't hesitate? Only Riesel, unexpectedly, was smiling. It's not that bad. Riesel quickly hid the uncontrollable twitch at the corner of his mouth. Even if the opponent is stronger, there are examples of the weak overcoming the strong, and there are many of them. Otherwise, there wouldn't be so many high-class adventurers in this world. Indeed, even though the requirements for leveling up were strict, there were still quite a few who managed to achieve it in the end. Why? Because being weaker than the opponent allowed for compensation through skill, reversal through tactics, and even a plethora of plots and tricks. To be more direct, wasn't magic also a miraculous trump card? If you happen to encounter an opponent stronger than yourself, then, by risking it all and casting a super long chant wide area annihilation magic, unleashing the power to scorch the sky and boil the sea, could it be that it was impossible to burn down a stronger opponent in one go? All these possibilities hinged on the potential of the weak triumphing over the strong. Of course, there was also a simpler method. I suggest you find someone to form a party. Loki advised. Facing stronger enemies, challenging them in a party setup, using the combined strength to tackle the opponent, that's the shortcut to obtaining high-rank Excelia and achieving exploit. In short, if you couldn't win a duel, you just ganged up on them. Challenging stronger opponents in this way could also yield exploits. However, by doing so, Excelia was distributed among all the members of the same party, which might have led to insufficient accumulation of high-rank Excelia for a one-time level up. But if once wasn't enough, then didn't a few more times enough? This was why the conditions for achieving exploits were so strict, and yet many people still managed to level up successfully. Challenging in a party setup was both safe and reliable. Luckily, this Familia's got loads of kids, and there are plenty of high-level kids. They can guide you safely as you level up. Loki glanced at Riesel and grinned. If you need anything, just give me a shout. The meaning of her words was clear, he just needed to directly tell her if he needed help and she would help arrange a party to guide him. This was also one of the advantages of joining a big Familia: someone to lead you, someone to take care of you, someone to guide you, and someone to protect you. There was no need to worry about not progressing, only the concern of whether one's potential was enough. In a weaker Familia, finding a companion to form a party was a big problem. From this perspective, Riesel's initial choice to join Loki Familia was undoubtedly a wise one. Otherwise, why would so many people have hoped to join a big Familia? It was clear that the connections and resources of a big Familia were too advantageous. Only party, hey. Riesel unconsciously furrowed his brow, leaving Loki at a loss for words. Oh, come in, kiddo. Wouldn't it be awesome if someone had your back? You never know what kind of troubles might come your way if you go solo. Looking at Riesel's hesitated face, Loki ground her teeth, holding back the urge to smash his head with the wine bottle. Meh, fuck it. Expecting you to grow up all nice and steady is probably wishful thinking. Since your status hasn't hit its peak, let's get you used to group combat first. We'll figure out the details when it's time to level up. Looking at Riesel's growth potential, there was no doubt that he hadn't fully unleashed his potential at level 1. Given this trend, upgrading all his basic abilities to the A rank was undoubtedly possible, and even reaching the highest rank was a visible possibility. But could the power after leveling up from the strongest rank be the same as leveling up from the minimum rank? Both were level ups, and the power gained after leveling up was the same. However, it was clear that those with higher status in the initial rank would be stronger. I'm actually looking forward to seeing if you can pull off the miracle of hitting rank on all basic abilities. Loki chuckled. All rank? Riesel muttered quietly. That was indeed a miracle. At least, as far as he knew, even in the original work, only one person came close to this achievement. That legendary character, dubbed Orario's ultimate weapon, with the staggering level 7, had 4 basic abilities in his status reaching rank, just one short of achieving rank on all basic abilities. Apart from that individual, there was no second person in the original work with such terrifying basic abilities. Of course, the protagonist of the original work was an exception. He not only achieved rank on all basic abilities but even surpassed them, reaching a realm unheard of and unseen by even the gods. Riesel looked at the parchment in his hand, his eyes flickering. Compared to the protagonist, could he touch the possibility that made the gods amazed? I'm kinda looking forward to it. Riesel smiled and said with anticipation inside his mind. Chapter 26, Forming a Party. The next day. After Riesel finished preparing, he didn't immediately leave Twilight Manor to head to the dungeon. Instead, he stayed in the courtyard like other members. In his hand, he held a piece of parchment with a scribbled message written in common language. I've found you a party member. Although her level is higher than yours, I and the other 3 top executives feel that she still needs to hone her combat ability. Perfect timing, you 2 team up, form a small party, and train together. Clearly, it was a message written by Loki. In the morning, just as Riesel stepped out of his room, the message was already placed on the floor by the door, waiting for him to pick it up. Looks like Loki really found me a partner, planning to train my combat ability in a party, hey. Riesel was somewhat helpless, but he didn't oppose the idea and silently came here, waiting for his party member to arrive. Although going into the dungeon with someone meant he couldn't act as freely as before, honing group combat was indeed necessary. Especially when his level increased, and he needed to delve into deeper floors or even go on expeditions. Most likely, he would have to go with the other members. Considering this, starting to train group combat now, though a bit early, was acceptable to him. Of course, Loki's arrangement probably had something to do with preparing him for future exploits and leveling up. He might be planning to have him join the Familia's seniors for a secure experience gain. Riesel had no choice but to follow the goddess's arrangement for now. I just wonder who my partner will be. Would it be a first-class adventurer from the Familia executive? No, definitely not. If they went into the dungeon with him, it wouldn't be honing group combat, it would be showing off in front of the rookie and overpowering monsters for the rookie to see. Considering Loki's message, the party member should be a junior member within the Familia, not too different in level from Riesel, and with some apparent issue in their abilities. Who could it be? Riesel searched his memories of the original work. But before he could come up with an answer, hurried footsteps echoed through the courtyard. So sorry. I'm late. Accompanying the frantic footsteps was a nervous, timid voice filled with anxiety. In front of Riesel appeared an elf girl dressed conservatively with a touch of natural elegance while holding a staff. She had teak-colored long hair tied behind her head, and like a small animal, she swayed her tail like hair in panic. From the slightly tender face of the girl, it was clear she was no older than 15. Indeed, she was a junior member from Loki Familia, just as Riesel had expected. However, he never expected that the one assigned to be his party member would be such a highly anticipated rising star in the eyes of the Familia's higher-ups. Are you Lefiya Voridis? Riesel expressed his surprise. Yes. The newcomer was precisely Lefiya Voridis. Capable of using more than 3 types of magic, and proficient in the special magic called Elf Ring, one of the only 2 in Loki Familia who could do so. Lefiya slightly surprised. Ddo, you know me? Of course. Riesel regained his composure and gave a faint smile. You're the vice-captain's chosen disciple and successor, the future executive member of the Familia. Even as a rookie like me who recently joined the Familia, I've heard about your name. Not to mention, this girl was an important supporting character from the original work and one of the heroines. It would be strange if Riesel didn't know her. However, in his view, the behavior of this girl seemed to become more anxious and nervous. Successor and all that, I'm still too early for that. Lefiya wore a stressed expression. Clearly, the expectations of the Familia's higher-ups had put considerable pressure on her. Seeing her reaction, Riesel naturally wouldn't continue adding pressure to this girl who was younger than him. So, he slowed down his tone a bit. Since you're here, it means you are indeed my party member, right? Riesel confirmed, just to be sure. Yes. Lefiya nervously said. Although I'm not very reliable, I'll do my best to keep up with you. Please advise. After saying that, she even gave a deep bow to him. As he saw this, he took a step back, avoiding this gesture. Don't do that, Riesel said with a somewhat subtle look. Technically, I should be the one saying that. You got the roles mixed up, you know. Lefiya was a level 3 second-class adventurer, 2 levels higher than Riesel, who was just level 1. Moreover, he was a rookie who recently joined the Familia. Even though she was still a Familia junior, her seniority was much higher than him. Under such circumstances, logically speaking, what she said should be said by him. He should be the one feeling nervous and anxious, not the other way. However, why did the position completely flip, with her seeming like the rookie, and him the senior? It was nothing but absurd. But his expression and response, once again, didn't make her feel at ease, instead, it made her even more nervous. I'm still immature, unable to care for juniors as Lady Riveria does. Lefiya looked like she was on the verge of tears. She clearly wasn't the type with a stable mindset. In her eyes, she wasn't mature enough. Yet, was she supposed to guide a rookie relying on level and seniority, who also happened to be 2 years older and seemingly tough like Riesel? It was definitely impossible. Okay, calm down. Seeing the girl in a panic, Riesel tried to calm her down. From now on, we'll be forming a party and fighting together. In that case, let's be more natural with each other. You don't have to be too polite, and definitely don't use honorifics with me. Is that okay? Lefiya, after hearing this, relaxed a bit but still seemed somewhat tense. It's okay. Seeing Lefiya finally calm down, Riesel spoke straightforwardly since he wasn't a fan of beating around the bush. Honestly, I've got the upper hand in this situation. It's a bit unexpected to be on equal terms with a senior in the Familia who's at a higher level than me. If you're not into it, I'll tone it down and switch to using polite speech with you. Well, okay then. Lefiya carefully observed his expression and, seeing that he maintained a clear gaze without any emotional changes, reluctantly nodded. Only then did Riesel smile, while pondering the thoughts of the Familia's higher-ups. Without a doubt, the fact that his party member would be Lefiya, the future backbone of the Familia, was definitely an arrangement made by the higher-ups. Even though she had some immature aspects, the significance of sending the vice-captain's successor to his side, forming a party with a rookie who had recently joined the Familia, to hone their group compatibility was absolutely not ordinary. Upon careful consideration, Lefiya would be the one likely to inherit Riveria's position in the future and possibly become the Familia vice-captain. Clearly, she had to be someone who could become the future backbone of the entire Familia. In this regard, the fact that the higher-ups sent Lefiya to form a party with him held a meaningful implication. Are they already treating me like another Lefiya, someone in need of special training and attention? Riesel pondered, unsure of how to express his feelings about this. Was he happy about this attention? Or did he feel pressure for his future? Loki really put me in a position where I don't know whether to be happy or not, Riesel thought wryly. Nevertheless, despite his inner thoughts, he maintained a natural and calm demeanor on the surface. Are you ready? Riesel looked at Lefiya's face and asked. Yes, I'm ready. Lefiya nodded heavily. I've got 20 regular potions, 10 high potions, 10 poison cures, 20 magic potions, and I even prepared 2 elixirs. Nothing can go wrong. Riesel was left almost speechless by her words, and couldn't help but look at her with an extremely strange expression. What happened? Lefiya asked nervously. Is my preparation not enough? No, Riesel sighed. Your preparation is more than enough. It's so much that I feel overwhelmed. Potions, especially the high ones and magic potions, were valuable recovery items that only skilled pharmacists with the mixing development ability could create. Their effects were almost instantaneous, surpassing the speed of ordinary medicines and providing recovery in just a few seconds. Lefiya had prepared a large quantity of these expensive recovery items, including regular potions to quickly restore stamina, high potions to treat most injuries rapidly, and magic potions to swiftly recover the mind. But what caught him off guard was the addition of elixirs, the most effective high-ranking recovery potions on the market. Each elixir was worth a fortune, with a market price of 500,000 valis, comparable to some third-class equipment. Lefiya had prepared 2 of them, spending at least 1 million valis for this party operation alone. Was this girl that rich? Riesel, who usually only brought weapons, armor, and a bit of food and water when heading into the dungeon, looked at the visibly nervous Lefiya in silence. Chapter 27, Familiar Figure. Dungeon, first floor. At the entrance to this floor closest to the surface, Riesel and Lefiya descended the stairs. Accompanying them were other adventurers, beastmen, dwarves, elves, and even Amazonesses. Among them, Riesel and Lefiya didn't stand out much. Aside from a few male adventurers casting slightly lustful glances at her, the two hardly drew anyone's attention. Lefiya, however, seemed a bit uneasy. She tightly gripped her staff, carrying a massive backpack on her back, and followed behind Riesel, taking each step cautiously. He chatted casually with her until they completed the descent of the stairs and set foot on the soil of the first floor. So, just like we discussed earlier, I'll take the role of vanguard, and you'll be the rearguard for firepower support. Is that okay with you? Riesel asked. And no problem. Lefiya quickly nodded, not expressing any objections. Great. Then, I'll leave it to you. Riesel nodded and instructed. Since we're short one member in our party, as the rearguard, you might face some risks. I'll do my best to keep any monsters away from you. Just focus on chanting your magic. Typically, dungeon exploration was most effective with a party of 3, handling attack, defense, and support roles. The vanguard took on the main offensive role, drawing enemy attention, and blocking their advance. The midguard defended against enemy counterattacks and supported the vanguard. The rearguard primarily provided long-range support, using magic attacks, bows or crossbows, and also handled recovery for frontline injuries. The guild and familias organized exploration using this party example, as a party of 3 was considered the minimum requirement for dungeon exploration unless conditions didn't allow it. In situations where a party lacked a member, becoming a party of 2, the burden on each member increased, and the likelihood of encountering unexpected dangers rose. Lefiya, being a pure rearguard mage, could do little other than long-range attacks and support with magic. Considering this, Riesel took on both the vanguard and midguard roles himself. In other words, he had to act as the vanguard, charging forward, attracting enemy attacks, and intercepting all monsters to prevent any from reaching her position. This burden was indeed heavy, making Lefiya feel somewhat guilty. Sorry for not being of much help, Lefiya said while avoiding eye contact with him. Don't say that. Riesel shook his head. You're a rearguard mage, that's your role. You shouldn't be doing things beyond your responsibilities. With that, he took out a map, unfolded it, and laid it out in front of them. Considering our party was just formed, and we don't know each other well yet, let's take it easy today. We'll probably be fine exploring up to around the 9th floor. What do you think? Lefiya, who was a level 3 second-class adventurer, even as a pure rearguard mage with no close combat abilities, held the advantage in levels. Floors with only level 1 monsters were unlikely to cause fatal injuries to her. Therefore, unless they descended to the 13th floor with level 2 monsters, she would likely only sustain minor injuries even if attacked. However, considering it was their first time cooperating as a party, going directly to the 10th to 12th floors with larger monsters might have posed some risks. Therefore, Riesel temporarily set the goal for the 9th floor. Although he personally wanted to go further down, today's goal wasn't seeking excitement but honing group combat. He had to abandon the idea that could be criticized by everyone and focus on the safety issue that he wasn't too keen on before. However, while Riesel felt he had sufficiently considered safety, Lefiya was startled by his idea. 9th floor. Lefiya looked into Riesel, filled with shock. No way, right? He just became an adventurer not long ago, and he even received the blessing recently. He's a complete rookie. How can we run off to such a deep floor? She thought with worry. As someone who accompanied Familia seniors on distant expeditions, she had ventured to depths around the 50th floor. Naturally, a mere 9th floor wouldn't scare her. But Riesel had joined the Familia not long ago. Even though Lefiya couldn't quite adopt a senior attitude in front of him, she knew how dangerous it could be for a rookie to venture into the 9th floor. It was a floor that only seasoned adventurers, considered skilled even in level 1, could tackle, and that too in a proper party. For Riesel, a rookie who had joined the Familia less than a week ago, going to such a floor only with her, who was still immature in her own right, and taking on the roles of Vanguard and Midgard simultaneously was, to put it bluntly, a reckless move. No worries. Riesel assured as he sensed her reluctance. It's just the 9th floor. It won't pose any danger to me. With his current status, the 9th floor held almost no difficulty for him. Without delving into details, his basic abilities like Dex and AGI were already at rank, with STR and End at crank. According to the safety exploration requirements for level 1, from 8th to 10th floors needed a basic ability between Rank and Crank, while the 11th and 12th floors required Brank to Rank. Therefore, he could easily explore down to the 11th floor or even the 12th floor without a problem. But Lefiya, who was still unaware of all this, was somewhat concerned and hesitated. Seeing her like this, Riesel didn't insist. How about we try exploring first and decide later how far down we can go? At his suggestion, Lefiya breathed a sigh of relief and nodded repeatedly. Then let's go. Riesel put away the map and smiled at her. Looking at the calm and steady smile on his face, Lefiya seemed to find reassurance and started to smile as well, which was rare. At this moment, she had no idea that the calm and steady demeanor she perceived was just a surface impression. Soon enough, her understanding of him would shatter into pieces. Dungeon, 6th floor. This floor was deeper than the 5th floor, often referred to as the first casualty line for adventurers, and far more dangerous than the 5th floor. On this floor, there lurked a creature known as the War Shadow. It had a humanoid silhouette, devoid of any fur or skin-like texture, its entire body seemed as if coated in black paint. The head formed a cross, the face resembling a mirror, presenting a heteromorphic monster strikingly similar in height to a human shadow. The War Shadow, along with the killer ant on the 7th floor, earned the moniker Rookie Assassins. While their attacks were predictable, they possessed astonishing power and speed. With arms boasting an impressive reach, they could extend from various angles. Their sharp claws could effortlessly sever heads, much like a longsword. For rookie adventurers who had only faced low-level monsters like kobolds and goblins, they posed a deadly threat. Especially when the numbers of war shadows accumulated, even a seasoned level 1 adventurer could risk their life if surrounded. Considering this, many adventurers regarded war shadows as one of the most threatening monsters on the upper floors. Dealing with one or two was manageable, but encountering a group of them, unless you were at a higher level, was a challenge rarely undertaken. However, today, a rookie who had recently received a blessing, shattered this unspoken rule between adventurers in the most brutal manner. Pucci. Accompanied by a sound resembling the cutting of flesh, a silver sword swiftly sliced through a war shadow's neck, sending its cross-shaped head soaring. Riesel, wielding a slender sword, darted among a group of war shadows. The numerous war shadows surrounded him, extending their sharp claws, intending to disembowel him. Yet, their usual speed and attack range were ineffective before him. With bullet-like speed, Riesel effortlessly dodged the sluggish war shadows. His sword easily pierced through countless sharp claws, creating flashes of blade light, disemboweling, and killing war shadows on the spot, without stopping. From a distance, it looked like a phantom flickering among a group of war shadows, creating waves of blade light and after-images, engaging in a one-sided massacre that was particularly awe-inspiring. Lefiya, who watched from a distance, was left in awe. Originally planning to chant her magic for support, completely forgot her duties and stared blankly at the rookie wreaking havoc among the monsters. Is he really a rookie? Such an experienced movement. Such beautiful swordsmanship. Could a rookie really achieve such feats? Are rookies this strong nowadays? Then, what am I? A useless trash. Lefiya started to doubt herself, dumbfounded by the scene before her eyes. But most surprisingly, amidst Riesel's ruthless onslaught, she perceived a familiar figure. A figure she had admired, idolized, and cherished for a long time. Miss Ace. Mr. Riesel's fighting style, why does it resemble Miss Ace's so much? Lefiya was confused. Chapter 28, The Calm Before the Storm. The battle ended quickly. In the midst of the storm of slashes, not a single monster survived, all turning into a scattered mess of limbs and debris, leaving Riesel victorious. What happened? Returning with his slender sword in hand, Riesel was puzzled as he saw Lefiya standing there with a blank expression. No thing. Lefiya snapped back to reality, shaking her head while hesitating as she looked at him. Just say what you want to say. Seeing her hesitation, Riesel spoke up. That Lefiya stuttered for a moment. Do you know Miss Ace? Clearly, witnessing his fighting style so similar to Ace's, Lefiya began to doubt their relationship. She even recalled that not long ago, when she and the others returned from the expedition, Ace seemed to have noticed the newly joined Riesel and was quite attentive to him. This unavoidably made Lefiya think too much, and her gaze towards Riesel changed. In response to her question, Riesel raised an eyebrow while smiling faintly. Are you that concerned about my relationship with Miss Ace? Without hesitation, Lefiya nodded, then quickly shook her head afterward. I'm just a bit curious. Her face turned inexplicably red, with a guilty look. Seeing her funny reaction, Riesel chuckled and answered her question. I consulted her about magic and coincidentally learned some of her swordsmanship. Apart from that, there's nothing else between us. Instead of calming Lefiya, his explanation left her stunned. Consulted about magic. Lefiya looked perplexed. Yet. Riesel nodded. I have magic with a nature similar to your elf ring. Oh, Lefiya instantly understood. But precisely because she understood, she became even more astonished. Does Mr. Riesel have the same magic as me? Lefiya was extremely surprised. Well, somewhat similar. Riesel didn't elaborate much and simply agreed with her. Does that mean he learned Miss Ace's magic? Lefiya muttered quietly inside her heart. Her first thought wasn't about getting closer to him, who had the same type of magic as her, but rather, an instinctive urge to shout. So envious. Without warning, she looked at him with eyes filled with envy, almost as if there was a great divide between them. Why isn't Miss Ace an elf? Lefiya couldn't help but puff her cheeks as she thought about her magic, which was restricted to learning only from the same race. Okay, let's keep moving. Riesel chuckled awkwardly, quickly changing the topic and turning to leave. Wait a moment. Lefiya hurriedly stopped him. We haven't collected the magic stones yet. After saying that, she jogged over to the corpses of war shadows that Riesel had just defeated. She took out a knife she carried with her, digging out a small crystal from the chest area of one of the war shadows. That crystal was a magic stone, a crystallization of magical energy obtained from a dungeon monster's body. It could be used to create various incredible magic stone products, such as the magic stone lamps in Twilight Manor's courtyard. Due to the guild's monopoly on dungeon resources, they managed the purchase of these stones, processing them into products, and shipping them to other countries for big profits. Adventurers actively explored the dungeon to exchange the magic stones they obtained from monsters for money with the guild. It was said that the stronger the monster, the larger and more valuable the magic stone in its body. In comparison, magic stones from the 6th floor wouldn't fetch much, perhaps not even 1,000 valis. Nevertheless, money was money. Lefiya enthusiastically dug out more magic stones, causing the monster corpses, now devoid of magic stones as their cores, to rapidly lose color and turn into dust. This was the fate of monsters without cores. Their corpses couldn't even be preserved, as if they never existed in the first place. Occasionally, only some particularly developed parts could be left behind, called drop items. These could be used as materials for weapons, armor, and potions, exchanged for money with the guild, or sold to merchants in need. Besides magic stones and drop items, the dungeon also contained special minerals, plants, and natural products with unique properties. Adventurers sought these as treasures and hoped for wealth, especially for some exceptionally precious and rare items that could fetch a fortune on the market. In essence, most adventurers entered the dungeon for this purpose, to strike it rich overnight. Familias like Loki Familia considered these resources crucial for their operations. The dungeon was indeed an incredible place, both magical and dangerous. Watching Lefiya collect the magic stones and toss them into her large backpack, Riesel rubbed his nose. He dared not tell her that he had never bothered to collect any magic stones or drop items in the dungeon before. The former great young master, who couldn't wait to rush into the dungeon and slaughter everything in his path, had never developed the habit of managing resources properly. Can I say I completely forgot about this? Riesel couldn't help but say that as he saw Lefiya so energetically collecting magic stones to the large backpack swaying behind her. Or maybe I can carry the backpack for you. Upon hearing his suggestion, Lefiya decisively shook her head in refusal. Mr. Riesel is the vanguard and even takes on the role of the midguard. Your responsibility is to charge forward and defeat monsters. How can you fight while carrying such a big backpack? Lefiya said with an earnest expression. In the dungeon, if there isn't a dedicated supporter to accompany us, it's common for the rearguard to take on the role of a supporter. You just have to be vigilant. She referred to a supporter as someone who specialized in recovering and storing magic stones and drop items. These people were typically not strong combatants, their purpose was to free adventurers' hands and bodies, preventing them from fighting with heavy backpacks or items. In Orario, some less powerful people specialize as supporters and take on employment from adventurers. In larger familias with generally strong adventurers, supporters were often temporarily filled by lower-level juniors or rearguards. Lefiya was a rearguard and obviously had no intention of handing over the supporter's job to Riesel. But your level is higher than mine, Riesel emphasized. But I don't need to charge into the fray, so it's fine. Lefiya asserted firmly. On the contrary, a vanguard like you absolutely cannot add too much weight to the body. No need to worry. As for whether it was appropriate for a girl to run around with such a large backpack, Lefiya didn't even bring it up. Even as a pure rearguard mage with limited close combat ability and lower physical endurance, she was still a bona fide level 3 second-class adventurer. Carrying a backpack was easily manageable for her. Fine. Seeing her stubborn attitude, Riesel had to give up. If not for the awkward issue of how to explain, he would have suggested putting the backpack in the dimensional magic cube storage space. With the existence of storage space, he didn't need to worry about the weight problem. Unfortunately, he couldn't say that, so he could only watch her diligently retrieve every magic stone and continue to carry the large backpack. Done. After a while, Lefiya finally ran back. Let's go. Riesel nodded, turned, and walked away. Wait for me. She hurriedly caught up, temporarily setting aside another question in her mind. But this question lingered throughout the day in her heart. Even though he's a rookie who recently received a blessing, why is he so powerful? Staring at his figure speeding up and charging into the group of monsters ahead without fear nor hesitation, this question persisted in her heart. Amid Riesel and Lefiya boldly pushing forward as a newly formed party, little did they know that right after they left, an anomaly erupted in the very place they had just departed from. Crack! It started as a faint cracking sound. On the dungeon walls, a crack appeared without any warning, emitting a subtle gleam from within. Badump. Badump, asterisk. A heartbeat seemed to echo within, growing louder with each passing moment. This spectacle wasn't uncommon in the dungeon. Any adventurer had encountered this phenomenon more or less. Because this was the sign of a monster about to be born. Indeed, monsters in the dungeon were birthed this way. They didn't exist as life in the dungeon from the start, rather, they incubated and hatched within the dungeon. Just like birds breaking out of their shells, monsters would emerge from the dungeon walls at regular intervals, ensuring an endless supply and an unchanging number of monsters in the dungeon. This explained why the types of monsters encountered on each floor were typically fixed. Each species had a designated birthplace and rarely ventured to other floors unless something unexpected occurred. Of course, exceptions existed. And now, this exception was unfolding on the 6th floor. This was the so-called anomaly. Crackle. Amidst the grating cracking sounds, the dungeon walls were giving way, allowing a massive figure to emerge from within. Row aaaaar. Asterisk. Before long, an ear-splitting roar reverberated through the floor, causing it to tremble slightly as if offering a blessing for its emergence. Chapter 29, Abnormalities. Dungeon, 9th floor. On this floor, close to the 10th floor, were numerous chambers and short pathways. The ceiling, nearly 10 meters high, let in a luminous glow resembling sunlight, dispelling the darkness. The wood-colored walls were covered in moss, and the ground was carpeted with short grass, creating a small meadow. Bathed in the luminous glow from above, it gave the illusion of walking in a wilderness rather than an underground labyrinth. Different from the previous 8 floors in terms of terrain and environment, this floor presented a chaotic mix of monsters that had appeared on the earlier floors, all enhanced and ready to hinder adventurers aiming for the 10th floor. No new species of monsters appeared here, instead, creatures like Kobold, Goblin, and War Shadow from previous floors showed up in stronger forms. At this moment, groups of red-colored monsters appeared on the meadow, launching attacks against adventurers who intruded into their territory. These creatures resembled ants but with a distinctive feature: their entire bodies were a vivid red, and they were much larger than ordinary ants. Killer Ant, appearing from the 7th floor onward, was considered a rookie assassin along with the War Shadow from the 6th floor. With sturdy shells and developed claws, Killer Ant excelled in both attack and defense. In times of crisis, it could emit pheromones imperceptible to the naked eye, summoning its companions. It was a powerful monster, even more threatening than War Shadow. Adventurers rarely dared to confront a killer ant directly, let alone face a group of them. However, facing this group of killer ants that would terrify low-class adventurers, Riesel fearlessly blocked their path. In the background, a bright and melodious voice soon echoed. Unleashed streak of light, bough limbs of the holy tree. You are an expert of the bough. This was a chant, the chant to awaken magic. Shoot, sniper of the fairies. Lefiya held her staff with her eyes closed, and shortly after, a deep golden magic circle appeared on the ground beneath her, slowly revolving. Penetrate, arrow of absolute accuracy. On her raised staff, a dazzling magical energy condensed into light. Arc's ray. The next second, the gathered light on the staff was released. Whoosh! A colossal magic beam, resembling a curved arrow of light, plowed through the meadow and surged towards the approaching swarm of killer ants. Squeak! The killer ants, sensing danger, hastily halted their charge, but they were struck hidden by the incoming beam. Riesel witnessed Lefiya's released beam curving in midair, continuously hitting many killer ants. The affected killer ants either evaporated within the overflowing light or lost a significant portion of their bodies. Even attempting to dodge was futile as the curving beam quickly caught up to them. Her magic relentlessly eradicated the monsters, reducing their numbers without mercy. Squeak! 3 killer ants, closer to the 2 than the rest, leaped with ear-piercing shrieks toward Riesel recklessly while ignoring the magic beam. Riesel's eyes flickered, and his figure finally moved. Bursting with astonishing speed, he advanced instead of retreating, swiftly reaching them before they could attack. Pucci! A silver flash of an agile sword severed the head of one killer ant. Upon closer inspection, the sword's edge didn't strike directly on the ant's hard shell but sliced through a vulnerable spot around its neck before severing its head. Squeak! Squeak! The remaining 2 killer ants angrily cried out, raising their aggressively clawed limbs. Without hesitation, they flicked Riesel's sword. As his sword got flicked, Riesel remained unfazed. Not only did he keep his composure, but he drew his secondary weapon, a short sword. With a swift sidestep, he avoided their claw strikes. The short sword in his hand moved rapidly, carrying a chilly gleam as it stabbed into one of the killer ants' mouths. Keek! The killer ant attempted to let out a scream of agony, but its mouth was pierced by the short sword, causing only an inaudible whimper. Ignoring the monster's dying wail, Riesel twisted his hand holding the sword and mercilessly crushed the head of the killer ant, causing a spray of blood. Asterisk squeak. Squeak. Squeak, asterisk. The last surviving killer ant, sensing the danger, straightened its upper body and emitted rhythmic cries. This was its special skill calling for reinforcements. Unfortunately, there were no other killer ants nearby. Pucci. With a decisive slash, Riesel cleanly severed the upper body of the last killer ant. His sword cut through its body at the joints, leaving it split in two. The meadow finally returned to calm. Is it over? Lefiya, positioned in the rear, released the staff she had been nervously gripping. It's over. Riesel observed the surroundings and nodded. There shouldn't be any more monsters in the vicinity. Thank goodness. Lefiya patted her chest in relief, placing the magic potion she had been holding back into her backpack. How is it? Are you okay? Riesel asked as he saw her condition. You used magic quite a few times, can your mind handle it? I'm fine. Lefiya forced a somewhat strained smile. The pressure from the upper floors isn't too much, and I don't need to infuse too much mind to use magic. So, I'm okay. In this world, the fuel for magic wasn't stored in the gate like in his main world, it was the so-called mind. Magic consumption depleted the mind, and the stronger the magic, the greater the mind consumption. To maintain a sufficient supply of mind at all times for using magic, Lefiya constantly held a magic potion. Whenever she felt her mind depleting, she would immediately take a magic potion, using its effects to restore her mind. Don't you have development abilities like spirit healing that can automatically restore the mind? Riesel asked. No. Lefiya shook her head quickly. That's not an easy-to-do ability. I heard you need to regularly use magic and consume your mind to a significant extent. Among the people I know, only Lady Riveria possesses that development ability. I still have a long way to go. She had a low opinion of herself, even a hint of an inferiority complex, which caused him to frown. In my opinion, your abilities are excellent. Riesel said with an earnest expression. Like the magic you just used, that Arc's Ray, it's supposed to be a short chant magic with not much power. However, when you used it, a magic that should have been just a ray turned into a light beam, a rare level of power for level 3, right? The magic Lefiya had just used, Arc's Ray, was one of the 3 magic she possessed. It was an arrow-type magic that emphasized speed and had a short chant. Although it had an automatic tracking feature that made Riesel raise an eyebrow, it was supposed to be a low-power single-target magic. Yet, due to her powerful mag basic ability and skill assistance, what should have been a relatively weak single-target attack had turned into a beam-like group attack. This level of capability was something no ordinary level 3 could achieve. Only those truly top-tier first-class mages could manage it. Riesel had personally experienced Lefiya's magic firepower that could rival a level 5. It was indeed exaggerated, said with no trace of politeness. The only problem was, your chanting speed seems a bit slow. Is it because you're nervous? Riesel pointed out. Lefiya immediately lowered her head in embarrassment. I think I understand why Loki said you need to train. Riesel chuckled. Even though your magic is excellent, your temperament is a bit fragile. Your mind and emotions are all over the place, which is dangerous when using magic that requires a calm mind at all times. Without a strong heart, how could you calmly chant magic and cast it when threats approach? Lefiya's problem lay here. Despite her natural talent being excellent, there were indeed some immature aspects. Sorry. Lefiya felt a bit discouraged and her pointed ears drooped. Don't mind it. Just overcome your shortcomings, it's not a big deal. Riesel comforted her. Okay, let's call it a day. Tomorrow, think about how to solve your issue. Okay. Lefiya naturally had no objections and repeatedly nodded. The two began to pack up their things, picking up the magic stones and drop items from every killer ant's corpse, and preparing to return. Now it was getting late, and it was probably dark outside. Adventurers who had been exploring the dungeon one after another were heading back. This allowed Riesel and Lefiya to avoid encountering monsters on the way and walk smoothly on the clearly marked paths used by adventurers, making their way up without hindrance. In this way, the two quickly returned to the 7th floor and stepped onto the 6th floor. Riesel suddenly raised his head. Kia! Lefiya, who was following behind him, let out a surprised cry as she bumped directly into his back. However, he paid no attention to this and instead frowned while looking ahead. For some reason, he felt something was wrong. The airflow was abnormal. The atmosphere was abnormal. This was due to the perception of his wind element magic, Aerial. As a wind enchant type magic, even when not in use, the user's sensitivity to the wind would relatively increase based on the special nature of this magic. After learning Aerial, Riesel discovered this and sensed some abnormalities because of it. What happened? Lefiya asked, puzzled while holding her forehead where she bumped. However, the moment she finished speaking, Riesel's heart suddenly skipped a beat. Get down! Without hesitation, he immediately pushed down the surprised Lefiya. Boom! At the same time, a dark shadow flew over their heads and collided with the dungeon wall, creating a resounding crash. Chapter 30, A Lefiyan Death Battle. Amidst the explosion-like noise, the walls of the dungeon crumbled, countless debris scattered, and a cloud of dust rose, covering the surroundings. Lefiya, who had been tackled by Riesel, stared dumbfounded at the scene and took her a while to react. She only saw a gigantic claw, resembling a wild beast's claw, thrust into the wall and penetrating it. Don't just stay there! As Lefiya struggled to come to her senses, Riesel yelled, yanked her up, and rolled to the side. Boom! The next moment, another explosion-like noise occurred. Once again, the gigantic claw flew in and crashed down on the spot where both of them had been moments ago, shattering the ground. Dragging Lefiya, Riesel rolled a considerable distance before finally getting up and looking toward the direction from which the claw had come. As he looked, his pupils contracted, almost doubting his own eyes. Roar! A roar like that of a demon swept in from the front, raising countless dust and dislodging numerous rocks. A creature with a head like a dragon, a body like an elephant, roaring like a bull, with sturdy limbs and sharp claws, covered in thick fur. It resembled the behemoth from Western mythology that Riesel had seen in his previous life. Though not as terrifying as the myths, it still stood at around 4 to 5 meters tall. Even at just 4 or 5 meters, the creature was much taller than Riesel and Lefiya, undoubtedly a giant beast, a powerful monster that radiated a tremendous sense of oppression. It was panting, saliva dripping from its mouth. Its sharp claws held a severed limb, making it look incredibly gruesome. What kind of monster is that? Lefiya couldn't help but scream. Her charming face turned as pale as paper when she saw the ferocious beast breathing heavily, drooling as if it had been starving for ages, with a pair of crimson eyes fixed on both of them. Even Riesel couldn't help but change his expression. For one, he also didn't recognize this demon-like creature. Whether in the monster index of upper floors provided by the guild or the records in the Familia library, there was no mention of such a creature. Secondly, from the creature's body, he felt a suffocating sensation, indicating a significant threat. Undoubtedly, this was a very powerful monster. Why would an unknown monster appear on the 6th floor? Riesel pondered in confusion. Not only did its appearance not match any monsters in his memory, but it was also a large species that should only appear on the 10th floor and above, not something the 6th floor could breed. This made sparks seem to burst in his mind, recalling a term mentioned in a book. Irregular. This was the term used when encountering situations in the dungeon that deviated from basic patterns. Although the dungeon was a den of monsters, it still adhered to certain known rules and principles. For example, which types of monsters appeared on which floors were fixed. Moreover, the deeper one went into the dungeon, the stronger the monsters became. Under normal circumstances, monsters usually didn't cross floors. Even if it happened, it was usually limited to adjacent floors, and significant jumps between floors rarely occurred. Such rules had been explored, confirmed, and documented in books for adventurers worldwide to study. However, the dungeon was alive, not dead. It could birth monsters. It could autonomously repair damaged terrain. It could even, seemingly intentionally, spawn numerous monsters out of the blue, forming hordes to attack adventurers in times of trouble. Occasionally, it created exceptions, special cases, as if retaliating against intruders on its territory. Any such occurrence that broke existing confirmed knowledge and dungeon rules was termed an irregular. And now, both Riesel and Lefiya had encountered one. They faced this rare irregular. Roar! The monster roared, shook off the limbs hanging from its claws, and raised its 3 sharp claws, aiming at both of them. Seeing this, Riesel reacted almost instantly as he knew that the monster's claws could fly. Whoosh! The claw in the monster's hand violently shot out in front of his gaze. The speed was as fast as lightning. Boom! The sharp and massive claw struck the dungeon wall for the 3rd time, exploding the surface with a muffled popping sound, raising dust, and scattering rocks everywhere. This excessively powerful attack not only had astonishing speed but also a terrifying destructive power. Even a slight graze would likely have left any ordinary low-class adventurer severely injured. While carrying Lefiya, Riesel narrowly avoided it at the last moment but still got blown away by the shock wave. He crashed into nearby rocks, shattering them. Mr. Riesel. Lefiya only realized what was happening as she looked at him, who protected her. Unfortunately, he can't afford to respond to her at the moment. The ferocious monster, enraged by their evasion and failing to secure its target, began roaring and charging ahead with tremendous power. It smashed rocks and obstacles in its path, carrying a rolling dust storm, heading straight for Riesel and Lefiya like a berserker. This relentless charge left no time to catch a breath, undoubtedly reaching a deadly climax. Fortunately, Riesel was mentally prepared this time. While still carrying Lefiya, he spun around and kicked the fragments of the recently shattered rocks, turning them into projectiles that struck the monster's head. *Roar. The monster let out an angry howl as its head took a direct hit from the rock projectile. In pain, it was forced to halt its charge. Lefiya. Riesel finally took advantage of the brief moment to catch a breather and shouted at his only party companion. "Find a chance to use your magic." Leaving those words behind, he pushed her aside, unsheathed his sword at his waist, and with a stomp of his foot, turned into a bullet, shooting towards the monster. Roar! Seeing this, the monster was even more enraged as it raised its front claw, sweeping it toward him mercilessly. Riesel found himself couldn't dodge this sweep. Due to terrain restrictions on the 6th floor, they found themselves in a narrow passage. The monster, with its imposing size blocking the entire path, could unleash attacks that practically covered the entire surface of the passage. As Riesel charged at the monster like this, he couldn't avoid this sweeping attack that covered the entire passage unless he chose to retreat. Otherwise, he would have to take this strike head-on. But faced with this almost unavoidable sweep, he didn't choose to retreat. Tempest. Riesel chanted his magic. Soon, a surging and overwhelming wind wrapped around his body, covering him entirely. He transformed into a gust of wind. Without hesitation, he met the monster's claw head-on. Miss Ace's magic. After being pushed aside by Riesel and falling to the ground, Lefiya exclaimed in surprise, her eyes widening as she witnessed the scene where he used aerial. Although she had already learned from his mouth that he had learned Ace's magic, seeing it with her own eyes still surprised her. What surprised her even more was that after he cast the magic, he became invincible, just like Ace in her impression. Clang! A deafening metal collision sound suddenly rang out, unleashing a shock wave-like energy. Riesel with his slender sword, winding the wind around the sword edge. With a heavy strike, he clashed fiercely with the monster's sweeping claw, creating an intense collision and clash. Aerial gave him tremendous enhancement while also heightening the effectiveness of his weapon, enabling him to smoothly deflect the monster's claw and close in as he poured all his power into the strike. Roar! The monster erupted in anger and roared while raising its other arm to slam forcefully into the front. As he saw this, Riesel quickly lunged forward and struck the monster's chest with his sword. Puchy! The sound of the flesh tearing apart was not unexpected. But his wind-enhanced slash failed to completely break through the monster's flesh, it only tore through its fur, leaving a shallow wound. Compared to its massive body, the wound seemed almost insignificant. On the contrary, the monster's swing was unparalleled in power, delivering a thunderous impact on Riesel's body. Boom! Like a large truck colliding with an oil tanker, the collision echoed loudly. Riesel, whose figure was only slightly larger than the monster's fist, was hit by its pillar-like strike and was sent flying. Mr. Riesel! Lefiya let out a mournful cry. Roar! The monster immediately roared in her direction, causing her to shudder and retreat in fear. Despite being a level 3 second-class adventurer, she was intimidated by a monster from the 6th floor. As a result, her staff lost its purpose in her trembling hands. Find a chance to use your magic. Riesel's voice from before echoed in her ears, urging Lefiya to rise and resist. But her brain was like a blank space, frozen in place and trembling helplessly. As a result, the monster grinned maliciously, raised its claws, and aimed for her head. However, Puchy! A silver light, accompanied by a violent wind, flashed by and slashed at the monster's arm, causing it to burst into a spray of blood. *Roar! The monster's malicious grin turned into a howl of pain, and its claws involuntarily dropped. The next second, a gust of wind kicked up the dust, rushing towards the howling monster, with the chilly sword light rising from the swift wind. With a cold expression on his face and fiery emotion in his eyes, Riesel unleashed a powerful slash. A Lefiyan death battle, where mistakes were not allowed, unfolded at this moment. Chapter 31, Ace Wallenstein. Babel, Plaza. As night fell, the magic stone lampposts around the plaza lit up one by one, casting a bright glow that illuminated the towering limestone tower. Ace emerged from the tower, her dazzling golden hair untamed, and her body bore traces of dirt and disarray. Even so, she still attracted countless gazes, becoming the center of attention. "Look, it's the Sword Princess. The Loki Familia chick. Yep, as beautiful as ever, no less than goddesses. Guess she just got back from the dungeon, hey. Totally, always diligent. Came back from an expedition and straight into dungeon dives every day. Despite being level 5, she's known as the best swordswoman in Orario. If only I could become a first-class adventurer. Man dude, it's not that simple, you know." Amidst the crowd discussions, various emotions converged in the gazes directed at Ace: admiration, love, envy, and astonishment. As one of the most famous figures in Orario and the mascot of Loki Familia, she inevitably drew attention wherever she went, not to mention her beauty that rivaled goddesses. Ace was accustomed to it, or rather, she had long stopped caring. She kept her head slightly lowered, walking through the crowd, her mind occupied with other thoughts. Perhaps, she was thinking about her own problems. Her gaze grazed her own back, and the first thing that came to her mind was today's battle and the accomplishments gained yesterday. Ace Wallenstein. Level 5. STR, D535 D536. And, D531 D532. Dex, A813. AGI, A810. Mag, A888. Hunter, G. Abnormal Resistance, G. Swordsman, I. This was the latest achievement Ace obtained after updating her status at Loki's Divine Room yesterday. If this result were to leak, many people in Orario would have been astonished. Both STR and END had reached rank. Dex, AGI, and Mag simultaneously reached a rank. Even the development abilities were usually obtained only when leveling up. Ace had 3 of them. Although their ranks were not very high, compared to situations where adventurers leveled up without even gaining any development abilities, this achievement was considered excellent, enough to make others envious. With no trace of politeness, Ace's status was at a top tier among level 5. In Orario, and even worldwide, there were very few individuals with a status higher than her in the level 5 category. However, when thinking about her own status, Ace felt a slight gloom. Too slow. That's what she was thinking. These days, Ace had been tirelessly exploring the dungeon, delving into floors that regular adventurers found challenging to reach. The floors she reached were at least in the floors below the 20th floor, and every day she faced monsters classified as at least level 3 by the guild. On such floors, amidst such groups of monsters, Ace killed countless monsters every day, from dawn before the sun rose to dark nightfall, returning home looking disheveled and weary. However, despite all the hard work, after those few days, only the proficiencies of STR and END had slightly improved, while the other basic abilities hadn't budged at all. This had made her mood unpleasant since the night before. At that time, seeing Ace in this state, Loki decided to speak up. "I say, Ace, what you've achieved is pretty impressive, you know? Remember, you're level 5. Your status could grow in just a few days of killing monsters way below your level is commendable already. Not everyone can pull that off." With her usually squinted eyes wide open, Loki looked at Ace with a serious expression. "To achieve such results, children at your level usually struggle for several years, even more than a decade. Since you leveled up to level 5 only 3 years ago and have reached high status, your potential is considered the highest in our Familia. Even Finn and Gareth didn't grow as fast when they were at level 5. We hope you all become stronger and more outstanding, but everything has its limits. Even we as gods, don't expect our children to become heroes overnight. You're already running fast, running any faster might make you stumble. So, sometimes, you have to know when to stop, understand?" Loki's sincere advice echoed in Ace's heart. But in the end, she was still dissatisfied with her growth speed. It had been over 3 years since she reached level 5, and she knew she had achieved commendable results at this level. However, knowing the recent growth in her status was minimal, the frustration it brought wouldn't stop. In the dungeon, she battled monsters for days, yet the proficiency improvement in her basic abilities was only 2 points. How could she be happy with that? A while ago, she fought in the deep floors below the 50th floor with her Familia for about 2 weeks, defeating numerous monsters classified as level 4 or even higher. However, in the end, she only gained a total of about 10 points in basic abilities proficiency. It was too slow. Too slow for her satisfaction. Too slow, making her heart shrouded in despair. Especially after seeing someone growing at a speed that could be considered breaking the rules, her feelings were not just dissatisfaction but urgency and impatience. How much longer would it take for her to become strong enough at this rate? Fool's obsession. Ace recalled that unheard-of and unseen skill, her mind filled with thoughts. A skill that could accelerate growth and enhance one's potential limit. Why didn't she have such a skill? What kind of obsession would trigger that kind of skill? Based on the discovered ability of Falna, whether it was magic or skill, it was all related to one's nature or interests. In other words, it was the crystallization of longing, the fruit of imagination or fantasy. It sounded like a miracle that could turn fantasy into reality, just by thinking about it. But in reality, it wasn't so. In this world, countless people desired to get stronger quickly, but among them, had anyone awakened a broken skill that could accelerate growth and enhance potential ridiculously? If it was something that man could think of, why didn't she have it? Could it be that her wishes and feelings of wanting to get stronger were lost to that man? Could it be to possess a skill like Fool's obsession, merely having fantasy was not enough? The more exaggerated the skill, the more astonishing its effects, and the more it tested one's innermost thoughts and heart. Only when these inner thoughts and hearts were recognized and strong enough could they materialize during the blessing process. What kind of obsession made him awaken such a skill? Ace fell into contemplation over this question. In her mind, there was only the face of a young man who seemed calm and composed but carried a sharpness and excitement in his eyes. Ace Wallenstein yearned for power. An insatiable yearning. Because she had a wish, a grudge. For this, she had to get stronger as soon as possible. Embracing this wish and grudge, she continued to pursue the secret of getting stronger. However, just as Ace was about to leave the plaza and enter the main street, she noticed some commotion. Hurry to the guild. We must report this. Something's wrong. Something big is happening. An irregular appeared on the 6th floor, there are casualties among the adventurers. A group of adventurers who had just returned from the dungeon were in disarray on the street, their terrified appearance and blood-stained bodies causing Ace to stop in her tracks. Irregular. Ace furrowed her brow slightly as she heard the term that used to make adventurers nervous. Especially the following words caught her attention even more. Someone witnessed a human swordsman fighting an unknown monster, and there's a female elf by his side. Unluckily, Ace happened to know of such a combination. A combination that had just appeared today, surprising even herself. She overheard the Familia's members discussing it when she left the manor in the morning. Could it be Rizel and Lefiya? Ace felt somewhat uneasy. In the upper floors where a party of 3 was the norm, would it be a coincidence for a party consisting of only a human and an elf to appear? Ace didn't think so. 6th floor. Muttering to herself, Ace turned around and began to run. Her destination was the dungeon. Dungeon, 6th floor. As soon as Ace stepped into this place, the unease in her heart turned into reality. There was no other reason. She saw, on this floor that only rookie adventurers used to explore, many lay on the ground, lifeless, with high-quality body equipment. It was evident that their strength was impressive, adventurers who would have traveled deeper into the dungeon. Their corpses painted the ground and walls with crimson blood, their gruesome deaths making her deeply uncomfortable. This told her that there was indeed an irregular here, a powerful unknown monster had appeared. In her mind, flashes of 2 familiar figures, lying in a pool of blood with a lifeless expression, crossed her thoughts. Ace forcefully shook her head to dispel the images, yet her pace unconsciously quickened. Is it over here? Not long after, Ace noticed a tremendous noise, like the sounds of something in fierce combat. She hurriedly made her way to the source of the noise. Before long, she arrived at the battlefield. Soon, she saw the familiar figure of her junior. Lefiya! Ace unconsciously yelled. However, instead of Lefiya, who used to run over with a moved and happy expression upon hearing her call in the past, this time she just stood there, staring blankly ahead. Ace followed her gaze and, in turn, lost her own voice. ****. A massive, unique breed of monster appeared in the narrow passage, emitting an ear-splitting roar. In that roar, there was anger, hostility, berserk, fury, hysteria, and, finally, a hint of fear. Roar. Soon, Ace saw the massive monster she had never encountered before, roaring in agony. In front of it, a fearless figure drenched in blood charged and rushed forward. Chapter 32, Overcoming the Challenge. Rumble. It sounded like something was making noise. Crack. It seemed like something was cracking. The cavernous passage quivered repeatedly, accompanied by a constant roar that filled the air, signaling the unrest in this place. But all of this had been completely abandoned by Riesel, automatically dismissed, overlooked, and cast aside. Wrapped in the garment of the wind, he focused entirely on the enemy before him, with eyes that saw nothing else. Whether it was his accelerating heartbeat, his boiling blood, or even the impact and pain that swept through his entire body. Riesel, who was single-mindedly set on defeating the enemy in front of him, ignored it all. Two figures, one large and one small, completely disproportionate, engaged in a deadly struggle under these circumstances. Roar. With the usual roar, the massive monster swung its powerful arms consecutively, sweeping everything around the ground, walls, and even the ceiling, causing destruction everywhere, with the deafening roar and tremors echoing. Under the monster's rampage, the terrain in this area had been drastically altered, becoming uneven with scattered debris flying around, creating a chaotic scene. Sand and dust filled the air and the monster unleashed its power recklessly, instilling fear in anyone who witnessed it. However, only those observing from the sidelines knew that such outbursts were utterly futile. Because it hadn't landed a single blow on its opponent. Enveloped by the wind, Riesel, with a body seemingly too small compared to the monster, fearlessly charged toward the formidable enemy. The monster swung its arms continuously, its powerful hands creating a whistling sound with each sweep. However, Riesel anticipated each move and skillfully dodged them. His evasive maneuvers were unpredictable, sometimes sidestepping, other times lowering his head, occasionally leaping into the air, and at times rolling on the ground in a seemingly awkward manner. Yet, his movements were fluid, devoid of any excess or stagnation, and executed seamlessly. The monster's powerful arms, full of strength, could only land in empty spaces, causing meaningless destruction on the ground, walls, and ceiling. While smoothly evading, Riesel never forgot to close in on his opponent. His speed showed no signs of slowing down, swiftly closing the distance with the monster. In the next moment, silver lights flickered. Pucci, pucci, pucci. Several sword lights sliced through the monster's body, cutting through its fur and flesh, and causing blood to seep out. Riesel unleashed his maximum speed and skill, slashing multiple times while closing in to inflict damage as much as possible. Roar. The monster could only howl in pain, swinging its arm to smash the incoming tiny figure. However, it ended up hitting the ground and stirring up countless dust, missing its target. Riesel seemed to anticipate the monster's counterattacks, or perhaps he saw through its attack patterns. He withdrew before the monster swung its massive arms, turning into a gust of wind swirling around the monster. Pucci, pucci, pucci. In an instant, several silver lights soared again, and sharp sword edges accompanied by surging wind, once again cutting through the monster's body. The wounds were not significant, even small. However, Riesel aimed to accumulate damage, accumulating the results of the battle, and marking the monster's massive body with numerous scars. Evidently, he intended to continue fighting in this manner, relentlessly battling until he brought down the monster. Roar. The monster roared in fury, its massive body swinging, arms flailing wildly, unleashing a chaotic force that created an astonishing spectacle. Despite its formidable display, it couldn't land a single blow on Riesel. He danced around the monster, moving with extreme speed, slashing his sword to create a dazzling display of silver light and shadows around its body. His fearless figure, with a seemingly reckless yet decisive fighting style, eventually created an impressive imposing manner and charisma. Onlookers couldn't help but be influenced, captivated, and forget their own purposes. Ace was no exception. Just like Lefiya, she stood there frozen, watching the battle of Riesel unfold after she abruptly entered the battlefield. The intensity and determination in his eyes made her completely forget to act. There. Other adventurers soon rushed over. Seeing the battle between Riesel and the monster, they were ready to make a move, but Ace stopped them. Stop! Sword Princess, who rarely showed emotions or expressions, unexpectedly yelled sternly, startling the adventurers prepared to intervene. They froze in their tracks. Sword Princess! You're here too! Why did you stop us? The newcomers seemed to be high-level and high-class adventurers, either coming up from the lower floors sensing the commotion, or receiving a message about the irregular and rushing to resolve the situation. They were puzzled, not understanding why Ace was preventing them. To their questions, she had only one sentence. He's challenging the monster. Ace stared straight ahead, watching Riesel's fearless figure battling the monster with all he had. We can't disturb him. At her words, the adventurers looked at each other in confusion. However, soon they were also captivated by the ongoing battle. Boom, 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 boom. The unparalleled monstrous strength of the massive monster continued to rampage through the dungeon passage, the explosion and roar echoing endlessly without stopping. Riesel, enveloped by the wind, flicked away all the debris, dispersed all the dust, and even ignored the impact and shock waves. He danced dangerously close around the monster, evading every attack that came his way. His sword had swung countless times. The wounds he inflicted on the monster seemed countless. Aches permeated his body as if it were screaming at him to stop, to give up. But he ignored all external factors, fully dedicated to defeating the monster. ****. Eventually, the monster's roar carried less anger but more fear. The wounds covering its body were numerous, and the once enraged monster now noticed something was wrong. Its blood overflowed excessively. The accumulation of too many wounds began to affect its movements and speed, instilling a sense of fear inside the monster's heart. Realizing the danger, the monster stopped swinging its massive arms and recklessly charged toward Riesel. ****. Riesel had just prepared to lunge forward to launch another attack when the monster's sudden and unexpected charge hit him head-on. His entire body was shoved forward, dragged along by the monster's massive body. Bong! A stone pillar, pressed against Riesel by the monster, was shattered, exploding into a shower of sand and debris. ****. Seizing the opportunity for a counterattack, the monster relentlessly pushed forward, ramming into Riesel without stopping. It crashed into rocks and smashed against walls, pulverizing everything in its path. Riesel, bearing the brunt of the charge, narrowly avoided coughing up blood. Mr. Riesel! Lefiya's scream mixed with a mournful cry. Ace's pupils contracted, her figure tensed, and instinctively, her hand gripped the sword at her waist, ready to draw. However, at this moment, unleashed streak of light, bough limbs of the holy tree. You are an expert of the bough. A familiar chant suddenly echoed, leaving Ace dumbfounded. That's. Lefiya cried out again, her voice filled with astonishment. Shoot, sniper of the fairies. Penetrate, arrow of absolute accuracy. The chanting continued, causing a radiant light to converge in front of the monster. Arc's ray. Accompanied by a deep, cold shout, the brilliance transformed into a light arrow, exploding in front of the monster's face. ****. A thunderous sound, a burst of magical arrows, sent the unstoppable monster flying. Riesel, enveloped by the wind, reappeared before everyone with blood trickling from the corner of his mouth. However, in his hand, there was a shimmering magical light, revealing to the onlookers who had cast the magic just moments ago. Mr. Riesel learned my magic. Lefiya was stunned senseless as she realized this. But that's exactly what happened. Due to her previous use of magic in front of Riesel, he confirmed the magic, memorized the chant, understood its effects from her explanation, and, with his knowledge of the original work, fulfilled the conditions one by one. Thus, he directly learned her magic and employed it in this crucial moment. Watching the monster being blasted away, Riesel suppressed the blood rising in his throat and extended his hand once again. ****. Arc's ray. ****. Arc's ray. Arc's ray. With a swift chanting, Riesel unleashed a rapid-fire barrage of 3 Arc's ray. The light arrows of magical energy burst forth in quick succession, tearing through the air and evaporating dust, each one slamming into the monster's body before it could react, let alone get back on its feet. ****. A massive explosion ensued. The bombardment of the 3 magical arrows caused fiery explosions on the monster, scorching its massive body. ****. ****. The monster let out a painfully loud roar, repeatedly retreating from the magic bombardment. Its body was now stained with gruesome blood. At this moment, the wounds inflicted by Riesel earlier proved to be highly effective. The magic, which would have been considerably mitigated by the monster's resilient fur, now had a much greater impact due to the extensive injuries he had inflicted on it, severely compromising the monster's defensive capabilities. As a result, the flames generated by the magic burned through its massive body, causing it to howl in agony and retreat further. Unnoticed by the struggling monster, Riesel seized the opportunity to launch another charge. Tempest. The wind roared. Tempest. This was the peak output, the ultimate release of Ariel. The wind enveloping his body surged violently, transforming from a gentle breeze to a raging storm. With both hands tightly gripping his slender sword, Riesel converted all of his mind into magic, channeling the force of the magical wind onto the sword. Pucci. As the chilly silver light streaked through the tempest like moonlight, the most significant tearing sound to date echoed. The thrust of the sword edge, wrapped in the tempest, traversed the monster, successfully piercing its massive body. Roaa. The monster's roar abruptly ceased. Pang. The slender sword, wrapped in the wind, suddenly exploded and shattered into pieces. Riesel passed through the monster's massive body and fell to the ground. Behind him, the monster slowly toppled, its massive body revealing a gaping wound. Its life was finally extinguished. Chapter 33, Commotion. The thrust of the sword edge, wrapped in the tempest, traversed the monster, successfully piercing its massive body. Roaa. The monster's roar abruptly ceased. Pang. The slender sword, wrapped in the wind, suddenly exploded and shattered into pieces. Riesel passed through the monster's massive body and fell to the ground. Behind him, the monster slowly toppled, its massive body revealing a gaping wound. Its life was finally extinguished. Silence. When the monster was completely pierced, gradually losing its life, and crashed to the ground, all the spectators present fell into a profound and wordless silence. Cough. It wasn't until the sound of Riesel's cough echoed that he, who had also fallen to the ground, struggled to get up. Only then did everyone in the vicinity react, and their attention immediately focused on his body. Especially Ace and Lefiya, realizing what had happened, hurriedly ran toward him. MMR. Riesel. Are you okay? Lefiya looked visibly distressed as tears welled up in her eyes. I'm fine. Riesel shook his head, but his body was tormented by a wave of pain, causing his knees to buckle, almost falling to the ground again. Luckily, a delicate hand reached out from the side, supporting him just in time. Don't move recklessly. Ace, with her translucent golden eyes fixed on Riesel as if wanting to engrave the image of him bravely fighting with blood all over into her heart. You used Ariel too much. Your body can't handle such a heavy burden, coupled with your injuries. It's best not to move around casually. As the true master of Ariel, no one understood the side effects of this magic better than Ace. Being able to unleash such a special and powerful enchant-type magic with a short chant, the side effects were obvious and placed a significant burden on the enchanted target. Whether it was the body or the weapon, as long as it was enchanted by the wind force of Ariel, it would bear this burden. Therefore, in the situation where Riesel had just released Ariel's maximum output, his weapon shattered, and his body endured an unimaginable burden, making him look precarious. Are I right? We have elixirs. Lefiya spoke with a flustered tone and immediately took out an elixir from her backpack. She opened the bottle cap and awkwardly fed it to Riesel. He didn't refuse. After taking the elixir, he immediately felt a clear stream flowing through his body. The visible injuries on his body began to heal at an astonishing speed, while the burden on his body, which had endured immense stress, finally eased. Riesel exhaled gently, standing upright with Ace's support. Don't move recklessly. Ace scolded him again, with a faint hint of blame on her face, as if reproaching him for not listening to her advice. Okay, Riesel had intended to shake her off, but seeing her frowning in reproach, he had no choice but to give up. Lefiya. Ace finally turned towards her junior, who stood there looking a bit lost. Help him tidy up the loot and then we head back. Understanding that Riesel needed rest the most right now, Ace decisively made this decision. Got it. Lefiya, feeling like she'd been granted a reprieve, finally found something to do and hurriedly ran over to the massive monster's corpse. Coincidentally, the corpse had turned into a pile of dust, scattered into the air, leaving only a transparent crystal and a faded claw. Lefiya picked up the crystal and the claw before running back to Rizel and Ace's side. Let's go, back to the manor. Ace glanced around, looking at the adventurers who seemed to be approaching them. She supported Rizel, who was still having trouble walking, and decisively turned to leave. Lefiya soon followed them. The adventurers who had wanted to get closer to Rizel stopped in their tracks when Ace took him away directly. Who's that adventurer? One of the adventurers asked. No idea. People shook their heads in succession. Judging by the appearance of Sword Princess, could it be from the Loki Familia? Why haven't we seen him before? Maybe a rookie? They exchanged opinions, showing that Rizel's recent battle had indeed affected and impressed many, creating a stir. Let's go, spread the news. Some people exchanged glances and then left one after another. The rest either prepared to spread the information or gathered intelligence. The scene suddenly became deserted, gradually returning to silence. Only the damaged terrain was slowly repairing itself, appearing strangely eerie and untouched by mortal knowledge. An irregular appeared on the 6th floor of the dungeon. This incident not only spread rapidly in an extremely short amount of time but also caused quite a commotion. It resulted in significant casualties. At the time of the irregular appearance, many adventurers were on their way back, directly passing through the 6th floor and encountering this unexpected event. Coincidentally, this irregular appeared on the 6th floor, relatively close to the surface, within reach of novice adventurers. In other words, many of those who encountered the irregular were low-class adventurers with limited strength. These low-class adventurers met their demise without any surprises. Some died, others were injured, and the resulting commotion naturally became quite significant, making the entire night in Orario lively. People hurriedly shared the news, and the guild was promptly alerted, dispatching personnel to investigate the scene and gather information from those who witnessed the irregular. Not long after, the guild released some announcements to the public. The irregular is an unknown monster suspected to be a rare species never seen before. It is temporarily named Crocodile Dragon, classified as a dragon species monster, and will be categorized as Level 2. The monster has been resolved by the Loki Familia. In the coming days, the professionals from the guild will conduct surveys to confirm safety and ensure there is no further danger before releasing the investigation results. During this period, we recommend that Level 1 low-class adventurers temporarily avoid the 6th floor. Announcements like these were not only posted on the bulletin board at the guild headquarters but also sent to various familias. On this night, many people were destined to lose sleep. Loki Familia's base, Twilight Manor. In the Divine Room, Loki looked at the guild announcement that had just been handed to her, examining the contents written on the parchment before tossing it onto her desk. So, what do you all think? Loki asked the 3 top executives of her familia whom she had summoned to this room. Finn, Riveria, and Gareth, the higher-ups of the familia, had been brought to the Divine Room and were now informed about the entire situation. Classified as Level 2. Gareth crossed his arms and spoke in a muffled voice. What's more, it appears on the 6th floor, so close to the surface it seems like low-level adventurers won't be able to enter the dungeon for a while. It doesn't affect us much. After all, most members of our familia are high-class adventurers. Finn said while biting his thumbnail. But, to think a dragon species would appear on the 6th floor and a rare one at that. That's something we didn't expect. In the various dungeon floors, rare species were a small fraction, with numbers far lower than common monster types. These were known as rare species, not necessarily stronger but possessing some unique characteristics. Dragon species or dragon-type monsters, on the other hand, were a different story. Dragon species were widely recognized as the most powerful monster type in the dungeon. Whether appearing on the deeper floors or, as in this case, on the upper floors classified as Level 1, if monsters were connected to the legendary creature dragon, their power would be unimaginable. For example, the crocodile dragon that appeared this time was both a rare species and a dragon species, classified as Level 2. Its strength might even surpass that of an infant dragon, a rare species appearing only on the 11th and 12th floors, known for being able to wipe out parties of low-class adventurers. Such powerful monsters should typically appear in the middle floors from the 13th floor onward. Yet, here was a crocodile dragon appearing on the classified Level 1 upper floors, as if the dungeon were playing a malicious joke on them. As expected, it's the dungeon after all. Unexpected events are not surprising to happen at any time, Finn muttered to himself. Having battled in the dungeon for decades, Finn knew well that this mysterious labyrinth held many unsolved mysteries. While it attracted countless explorers, it also posed unimaginable threats to the people. No one knew if one day the dungeon might rebel or riot, allowing once suppressed monsters to surge back to the surface. Therefore, no matter how vigilant and prepared one was, it wasn't an exaggeration when it came to this labyrinth. Just didn't expect a monster of that caliber would be taken care of by that kid, goo-ha-ha-ha. Gareth laughed. That kid's got some talent, At his words, everyone joined in laughter. Who could have anticipated that a dragon species, classified as level 2, would be defeated by their Familia's rookie who had recently joined? Finn, having learned the details from Ace and Lefiya, smiled slightly. Only a week since receiving the blessing, he already challenged a level 2 dragon species, and not only succeeded but returned unscathed. Our rookie is quite something. Finn could imagine the uproar this event would cause once it became known. How is he doing now? Riveria showed some concern. According to Ace and Lefiya, after coming back, that kid just went straight to sleep. Loki spread out her hands. Can't blame him, challenging a monster like that, even dying wouldn't be surprising. It's already good that he came back in one piece. His body isn't seriously injured, the main issue is the heavy burden of using Ace's magic. He needs some good rest. Finn, Riveria, and Gareth exchanged glances. As I thought, it's not because of the monster, it's all because of Ace's magic, isn't it? Riveria's whisper plunged everyone into silence. Chapter 34, Status Update. Ariel. As mentioned before, this wind element enchant type magic was quite special. No, it should be said, it was exceptionally unique. While ordinary enchant magic could enhance the user and their weapon, the effects of those enchant magic were usually not too outrageous. At least, ultra-short enchant magic like Ariel was definitely not expected to be too powerful. Unless it was an ultra-long enchant magic with a chant comparable to wide area annihilation magic, the strengthening and enhancement of regular enchant magic were quite limited. But Ariel was different. This ultra-short enchant magic could be used with just one chant and had extremely powerful effects. It not only boosted the explosive enhancement of basic abilities but was also versatile in offense and defense, possessing almost omnipotent utility except for long-distance attacks. This had surpassed the realm of enchant magic, even those ultra-long enchant magic were faintly inferior, not to mention regular enchant magic. It was impossible to achieve such significant effects. Enchant magic that was faintly superior to even ultra-long enchant magic but could be activated with just one chant demonstrated the abnormality and uniqueness of Ariel. Ace, who possessed this magic, was known as the strongest swordswoman, becoming one of the city's strongest adventurers. This was due to the anomaly of this magic's power and enhancement. This was a kind of magic that allowed one to challenge opponents of higher levels. Ace, despite being a level 5, was more than a match for even the level 6 individuals in the city with her Ariel. This wasn't like Lefiya, who sacrificed her other basic abilities. She focused solely on mag, upgrading it to the highest rank, and complementing it with skills to achieve powerful firepower beyond her level. Ace, without sacrificing any other basic abilities, solely relying on one magic, possessed the capability to fight someone with a higher level, truly shocking anyone. Said without a trace of politeness, if one considered pure basic abilities alone, Ace with Ariel might even surpass level 6 adventurers like Finn and the others. It was understandable that Ariel would put a significant strain on the body and weapon. One slight mistake could lead to the breakdown of the body. However, the side effect of Ariel was actually not that significant, considering how amazing the results it brought. An excessively powerful power that didn't bring a burden to the user would be a strange thing. That was why people who didn't know might not believe that a mere level 1 rookie adventurer could defeat a level 2 dragon species monster alone. But the Loki Familia's higher-ups knew very well that Riesel had such a capability. In itself, that kid's status is already comparable to the level beyond level 1, akin to the veterans among low-class adventurers. Add to that exceptional wind enchant magic from Ace, he can take down a higher-level crocodile dragon is not impossible. Not to mention, he's also mastered Lefiya's magic, covering the only gap that Ariel lacks, which is long-distance attacks. Observing the 3 top executives of her Familia, Loki explained with a grin, leaning back with her legs crossed on the couch. I just can't believe that with the kid's ridiculous growth potential, he'd be worse than the pig of that slut, Otter. Hearing their goddess's malicious remarks, Finn, Riveria, and Gareth pretended not to hear, maintaining their composure. But they also admitted that from Riesel, they saw the potential to surpass that man. This made the 3 top executives especially hopeful. Looks like those stinky executive kids are really under pressure, Gareth smirked. Lefiya needs to step up too, Riveria said while closing one eye. Thinking about the matter of her disciple, she silently decided to give her extra lessons later. Only Finn, biting his finger, suddenly turned to Loki with a question. Challenging a level 2 dragon species monster in lower level condition, that's definitely considered a great exploit for a level 1, right? His statement made everyone fall silent. Finn looked at Loki solemnly. Is he about to level up? Riveria and Gareth also turned their gaze towards Loki. To Finn's question, Loki's reply was only one sentence. Although I haven't seen his status yet, but most likely, yes. The impact of her statement was easily imaginable. Reaching level 2 after receiving a blessing in less than a week. Riveria murmured. Now, Orario is really going to be shaken. Even the fastest ace took a year originally. But that kid did it in just 1 week, hey? Truly impressive. Even Gareth couldn't help but chuckle. How's his proficiency? Finn was somewhat worried. With his potential, he should be able to reach rank on all basic abilities, don't let his potential go to waste. When people of the same level contended, what factors could determine their victory or defeat? Undoubtedly, it was the difference in basic abilities. The basic abilities developed before leveling up were the decisive factor. As mentioned before, comparing someone who leveled up with basic abilities on this rank with someone who leveled up with basic abilities on the rank, the difference in power was self-evident. The improvement during leveling up was the same for everyone, so the difference in basic abilities before leveling up became the gap between 2 individuals. Of course, an adventurer's combat techniques, experiences, tactics, magic, and skills were also decisive factors. Just looking at the basic ability alone couldn't determine the final outcome. However, it was still an advantage, and not ignoring it was undoubtedly a wise choice. In such a situation, unless Riesel truly couldn't continue to grow his basic abilities, Finn wasn't in favor of letting him level up now. If it were ordinary Familia members, instead of being entangled in the improvement of those basic abilities, it was better to significantly enhance combat power through leveling up, since exploring the dungeon was a life-threatening activity. No matter what, the improvement gained from leveling up was incomparable to the improvement of a few ranks in basic abilities. Moreover, leveling up could unlock new potential and elevate oneself to another level. Considering these undeniable benefits, abandoning the growth of the current level and directly focusing on the growth of the next level was a wise move. However, Riesel's growth speed couldn't be treated the same as other adventurers, as his potential seemed bottomless. For him, taking some time to develop basic abilities was a very wise decision. He's already growing fast enough. Let him slow down a bit, it's not a bad thing. Finn said what he believed. Loki, although deeply agreeing with him, chose to respect Riesel's opinion. Let's talk about it when the kid wakes up. Loki shook her head. If he wants to level up, I can't stop him, it's ultimately his decision. I can only advise and can't make decisions for him. Finn, Gareth, and Riveria nodded. Honestly, I really can't wait, Loki said with a playful smile. After this battle, how absurd will his growth be? Poor her, she had no idea what she was about to witness later. Twilight Manor, Riesel's room. As the sunlight streamed in through the window, casting its warmth onto the bed, Riesel finally woke up. Damn, it's so dazzling. He raised his hand to shield his eyes from the direct sunlight, squinting as he slowly sat up. With this movement, a slight soreness instantly surged through his entire body. However, this didn't ruin his mood, it actually relieved him. Well, looks like the injuries aren't that bad. If it was only soreness, it meant it was not due to injuries but rather the strain from forcefully boosting the output of Ariel hadn't completely subsided. Though it posed its own problem, compared to being injured, a little soreness was manageable for him. He definitely didn't want to lie in bed and nurse his wounds for another month. Lefiya's elixir works wonders. If I have money, it's best to keep some on hand. I could even use the dimensional magic cube to bring some back. This kind of magic potion could heal even fatal wounds if conditions allowed, it was best to be prepared. He seriously considered this issue as he got out of bed, dressed, and left the room. His destination was Loki's divine room. Yesterday, after she came to check on him, she instructed him to come find her once he woke up. Twilight Manor felt somewhat deserted since it was still early. Riesel walked all the way without encountering anyone, reaching the top floor of the central tower and entering Loki's divine room. At this hour, she still had a sleepy look on her face. "You're up early, kiddo." The goddess looked at him with resentment, as if blaming him for interrupting her beauty sleep. "Did you pull another all-nighter last night?" Riesel asked while walking into the room and instantly smelled a strong scent of alcohol. Looking at the empty bottles on the floor, it was clear why this unreliable goddess was in a bad mood upon waking up. "Not an all-nighter, just had a bit more to drink." Loki extended her finger, making a small gesture. Unfortunately, all he could see between those fingers was a vast universe. "Drink a little less," Riesel advised Loki, to which she nonchalantly replied yes, 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 clearly not taking it to heart. "Come on, let's update your status quickly," Loki said with enthusiasm while patting the seat in front of her. Riesel nodded, took off his shirt, and sat down in front of her. I'm really looking forward to this." Loki seemed to be in a good mood as she spoke, swaying and shaking her head left and right. She quickly pricked her fingertip and started working on his back. "Let me see what you've got this time." Before she could finish her sentence, however, she suddenly stopped. "What the fuck is this?" Loki couldn't help but curse loudly in shock. Chapter 35, SSS. Riesel Brynhart. Level 1. STR, C678 SSS 1285. And, C666 SSS 1273. Dex, B772 SSS 1327. AGI, B793 SSS 1309. Mag, F314 SSS 1280. Loki rubbed her eyes in disbelief, making sure she wasn't seeing things. Convinced it wasn't an illusion, she was finally dumbfounded. She didn't even bother handing the translated parchment to Riesel, instead, she silently stared at his back, feeling dizzy. "Loki." Riesel looked at Loki's expression and tentatively called her, but she didn't react at all. "Holy crap! What the hell is SSS?" Loki suddenly shouted, clutched her head, and screamed hysterically. "SSS?" Riesel raised an eyebrow, somewhat surprised but not as excited as her. Loki, who didn't see his reaction, continued to hold her head in shock and shouted madly. "What the heck is this? What the fuck is this? Are the proficiency limits for basic abilities 999 and S? What in the fuck's name is this SSS? I've never heard of such a thing." Loki was genuinely shocked, really shocked. Although she had only been in the lower world for a few decades, as goddess of one of Orario's strongest familias, she naturally had a lot of information at her disposal. Thanks to her shameless personality, she dared to inquire and meddle in everything, and other gods more or less gave her some face, revealing some of the lower world's secrets to her. Thanks to this, her knowledge was quite extensive. As she managed one of Orario's strongest familias, she was very familiar with the blessing granted to the familia's children. But even so, she never heard of basic ability breaking through the highest limit of strength and surpassing the limits of blessing. At least, within her knowledge spanning 1,000 years from heaven to the lower world, such a thing had never happened. Of course, it was also possible that it had happened, but she just didn't know about it. However, this was indeed the first time she had seen such a possibility, naturally leaving her shocked. Leaving aside the SSS, the total proficiency increase of over 3,200 is also absurd for fuck's sake. So far, Riesel's growth speed had been astonishing, even frightening. However, there had never been a time like this, where his basic abilities simultaneously increased by several thousand. Especially Mag, it shot up from F to SSS straight away couldn't be anything but absurd. The rest of the basic abilities were the same, not progressing one rank at a time but directly leaping over 4 or 5 ranks. It was beyond absurd, it was the embodiment of absurdity. Could it be? Loki suddenly remembered something. She recalled the effects of Fool's Obsession, which not only extraordinarily increased growth speed and growth limits but also enhanced its effects under specific conditions. The deeper the obsession, the stronger the effect. The effect is greatly enhanced when in dangerous situations. Fool's Obsession had these two effects, and Loki had an epiphany. In a Lefiyan death battle against a level 2 crocodile dragon as a level 1, a fight of this degree could definitely be considered a dangerous situation, right? Considering how deep Riesel's obsession ran, Loki could understand. He must have become completely excited during his battle with a powerful opponent, igniting his inner fighting spirit and intensifying his obsession. Both effects were triggered, naturally amplifying this skill to a significant extent. That was why, the growth rate this time was so absurd, multiplying several times over, resulting in the current outcome. All basic abilities at SSS. The potential barrier for the mortal of the lower world known to the gods, the limits of blessing, had been shattered to pieces. Loki. Just as Loki was feeling absent-minded about this, Riesel's somewhat helpless voice reached her ears. Why don't you let me see my status? He was curious and eagerly anticipating his current status. Loki took a deep breath, and shortly afterward, she looked at him with seriousness. Don't get too scared, okay? Loki said with a hesitant tone. At her words, Riesel smiled disapprovingly. Scared? Impossible. From her yell, he could probably guess what had happened. So, did my basic abilities upgrade to SSS? He wasn't shocked by this news. Because he had known about this possibility for a long time. In the original work, the protagonist grew to this rank more than once after acquiring cheats, surpassing the theoretical limit of status. So, Riesel had long known that beyond S, there were the ranks of SS and SSS. 900,999 was S. 1000199 was SS. 1,200 and above were SSS. This possibility had been proven by the protagonist in the original work, and Riesel had also hoped that he could break through the limit of status, reaching a stage that no one else had reached. As expected, when Loki handed the parchment with the translated text to him, he saw his status written on it. All SSS. Riesel muttered in surprise. He already anticipated that several of his basic abilities would reach SSS, but he didn't expect all of them to hit that rank. If he remembered correctly, even the protagonist seemed to have only SSS in the basic ability he excelled in, which was AGI, while the rest of his basic abilities only reached SS at best. And here he was, with SSS in all basic abilities, receiving a perfect report card. In other words, was he stronger than the protagonist? Ha ha ha! Riesel couldn't help but laugh. You can still laugh, kiddo. Loki had been watching him, observing his reaction. Seeing him only slightly surprised and calmly laughing, she couldn't help but comment. This is a big thing that could shake the entire Orario and even the entire lower world. I don't know how to handle it, how to react, and you're just laughing? You're truly a mad lad. Well, what else can I do? Riesel surprisingly remained calm as he smiled at her. I've only received the blessing for a few days. You expect me to be shocked? I can't muster up shock that quickly. Loki was momentarily speechless. Indeed, considering the short time he had received the blessing, even if he were told that the limit for others was S and he broke through to SSS, he probably wouldn't grasp the magnitude of it. Unlike her, who had spent decades in the lower world, handling countless blessings, witnessing something like this was bound to shake her worldview. Back in the day, when she had just descended from heaven, she probably would have a simple thought like I've hit the jackpot or something similar. Unfortunately, she had operated a Familia for decades, mingled in Orario for years, and had a deep-rooted understanding of blessing. It was inevitable that she would be shaken by such an extraordinary occurrence. Is this what they call the unknown potential of mortal? Loki sighed, holding her forehead tiredly. After a while, she finally chuckled. Okay, I guess I understand why those damn fellows are so crazy about the unknown and potential of the lower world. This kind of thing that even surprises me is indeed exciting. Having survived countless ages, gods probably detested nothing more than things that never changed. So, they needed entertainment. So, they needed excitement. For this, they didn't hesitate to not use their arcanum, transforming into fragile being like mortals, indulging in the pleasures of the lower world, and chasing the unknown. Loki was part of that, and after the initial shock, excitement and thrill filled her heart. As a result, she looked at Riesel differently now. Good thing you're in my familia, kiddo, Loki said faintly. Otherwise, if I found out there's a kid like you outside, I might not hesitate to use any means to snatch you away. This was a choice that all gods might make upon learning about the unknown within Riesel's existence. Riesel Brynhart, this child's body harbored something that the gods pursued. He. Thinking about having such a child in her familia, Loki couldn't help but laugh and relish the thought. Stop laughing. After confirming his status, Riesel rolled his eyes at her. Besides gaining growth in status, is there no other aspect of gain? Due to the skill self-redemption, he had a certain level of perception and understanding of his own status. This skill, which granted him the ability to independently update his status, seemed to be telling him that what he gained went far beyond just this. And indeed, it was. Challenging that monster at level 1, how could you not have accumulated enough exploits? Loki sighed emotionally. Your high-rank Excelia is already maxed out. Riesel naturally understood the meaning of that statement. Level up. Loki said with a smile. You can level up now. Hearing this, his eyes lit up. Obviously, this news was something to be happy about for him. Breaking the limits of his status was undoubtedly a good thing. However, the periodic improvement of basic abilities still couldn't compare to the boost from leveling up. If one's basic abilities could rapidly push the body to its limits or even break through them, then leveling up changed one's life. The improvements gained at that point far surpassed the ranks of a few basic abilities. How? Ready to level up now? Loki confirmed with a smirk. Let's level up. Riesel nodded and replied without hesitation. This wasn't just because he urgently wanted to enhance his strength, but also because he could feel that his growth had reached its limit. At level 1, his potential had been fully unleashed, leaving nothing untapped. In such a situation, staying at this level would be meaningless. Since that was the case, he naturally wouldn't hesitate. However, before leveling up, there's one thing that needs confirmation. Loki said while looking directly at Riesel's eyes. You need to choose a development ability. A development ability that only had a chance of appearing when leveling up. Riesel successfully triggered it. Chapter 36, Development Ability. When leveling up, could anyone learn development abilities? It depended. It wasn't just about luck but rather depended on one's accumulated Excelia up to now. Similar to basic abilities, enhancing a particular basic ability required one to take corresponding actions. Only by engaging in activities that utilized that ability could one accumulate the necessary Excelia to foster its growth and transform it into actual progress during a status update. While potential and innate skills mattered, in general, the development abilities learned during leveling up depended on the actions one had taken. As long as one took specific action and accumulated enough Excelia to trigger development ability, that ability would appear during level up, available for learning. On the other hand, if one hadn't gained noteworthy Excelia to meet the conditions for learning development ability, even if they leveled up, they wouldn't acquire any development ability. In this situation, if suitable Excelia was obtained, even multiple development abilities might appear for selection. Currently, Riesel found himself in such a state. You've triggered 4 development abilities, but you can only choose one to learn if you want to level up immediately. It's decision time, kiddo. Loki informed him and conveyed the 4 development abilities he triggered. The first development ability is Hunter. This was a development ability specialized in dealing with monsters, triggered by defeating a large number of monsters within a short period of time. Once learned, the status of the adventurer possessing this development ability would be strengthened when encountering monsters of the same type they had fought and gained Excelia from. Since this ability could only be learned at level 2, it was quite challenging to obtain, making it a valuable ability. Considering adventurers often explored dungeons and regularly faced monsters, Hunter was highly sought after by adventurers and even various gods. It was a development ability most adventurers hoped to acquire. Although Riesel had only received the blessing for about a week, he delved into dungeons every day and immersed himself in battles. As a result, he defeated a significant number of monsters within this short period, successfully triggering the learning condition for Hunter. The second development ability is Abnormal Resistance. This was the previously mentioned ability that could resist abnormal symptoms such as poison, triggered by sustaining damage from abnormal statuses. In the upper floors of the dungeon, a monster known as Purple Moth frequently released poisonous powder, posing a threat to adventurers. Therefore, most adventurers experienced attacks from abnormal statuses early on, making this development ability relatively easy to obtain. Thanks to this, most adventurers could acquire Abnormal Resistance when reaching level 2. This made Abnormal Resistance almost a guaranteed benefit for everyone upon leveling up to level 2, avoiding the awkward situation where adventurers leveled up without gaining any development ability. Riesel had also been bothered by purple moths frequently, so it was normal for him to trigger this development ability. The first 2 development abilities mentioned were practical and easily triggered by adventurers who frequently entered dungeons and dealt with monsters daily. Even Loki Familia's first-class adventurers had mostly acquired these 2 development abilities, and the same went for other adventurers. However, the next 2 development abilities were different. The third development ability is Swordsman. Loki chuckled and tilted her head. This is a rather rare development ability, something only top-notch swordsmen can trigger. In our Familia, only Ace has this ability, and she learned it when she reached level 4. You, on the other hand, fulfilled the learning conditions just after reaching level 2. If Ace finds out about this, she's bound to feel frustrated. The effect of this development ability was quite simple, it enhanced the holder's status when using a sword as equipment. The higher the ability's rank, the greater the boost. Even at the initial I rank, there was still a noticeable improvement. If nothing unexpected happened, Riesel tended to lean towards choosing Swordsman. Although Hunter was an ability that could only be learned when reaching level 2, making it relatively precious and the type that you missed out on if you didn't grab it in time. However, its effectiveness was limited to dealing with monsters you had defeated before. For Riesel, who wouldn't be permanently living in this world but instead traveling through various worlds, its utility would be significantly reduced. As for Abnormal Resistance, there was no need to select it since his skill already provided the identical ability on the highest rank. Why waste valuable learning opportunities on a low-rank Abnormal Resistance? In this way, Riesel naturally leaned toward choosing Swordsman. However, the appearance of the fourth development ability made him hesitate. The fourth development ability is Lightweight. Loki's words momentarily stun him. Lightweight. Riesel furrowed his brow, confirming that he had never heard of this development ability. If even he, who was familiar with the original work, didn't know about this ability, then its rarity became apparent. I've never heard of this ability before. Even the development abilities records logged by the guild, which has documented all known abilities, don't have any mention of it. Loki looked at Riesel with an increasingly evident and thickening smile on her face. This is a seriously rare development ability, and you could totally be the first to uncover it. Isn't this just your hidden potential shining through? In other words, it was unique. Let's choose this one, kiddo. I feel like this ability should be powerful. Loki continued with a somewhat excited and agitated tone. As a goddess pursuing the unknown, seeking excitement and entertainment, she naturally didn't want to miss out on this ono-fei-kind treasure of an ability. However, the one in question paid no heed to the overly excited goddess. What's the effect of this development ability? Riesel asked calmly. I'm not sure. Loki shook her head. But based on my understanding, it should be an ability that sacrifices defense in exchange for extraordinary speed. The vision and observational skills of gods were extraordinary. Even with only vague and fragmented words, they could judge the approximate effects and types of development abilities based on the tendency of Excelia when triggering that ability. If my understanding is correct, after learning this ability, the more you reduce the equipment and weight on your body, the more agile you become, Loki explained. This development ability was designed to enhance Dex and AGI. In contrast to the swordsman, who required a sword to trigger effects, the effect of lightweight was activated by reducing the weight of the body's equipment. So, as Loki explained, it was about sacrificing defense for extraordinary speed. Due to the requirements of lightweight, once this development ability was acquired, Riesel would likely have had to completely forego heavy equipment in the future. Especially heavyweight equipment like metal armor, equipping them would have rendered lightweight useless. Considering that the fewer the body's equipment, the greater the enhancement, he might have even had to reconsider using the leather armor he had been relying on all this time. This meant his defense would have been reduced to a minimum. On the other hand, his Dex and AGI would have seen a significant boost. Looking at your status, it's clear that your power lies in Dex and AGI. Combined with consistently wearing lightweight leather armor, this development ability will be triggered, right? Of course, considering this unique development ability has never appeared before, there might be other conditions to fulfill to trigger it. In any case, the rarity of this ability is extraordinary. If you don't choose now, you might not have the chance to obtain it again in the future. Loki seemed to be enticing him with a mischievous expression on her face. So, what's your decision, kiddo? Having heard all this, Riesel had no room for choice. Hunter and Abnormal Resistance were not choices. Swordsman was valuable, but it could be learned at level 4 like Ace, so there was no need to rush. Considering all factors, did he really need to ponder over his choice in the first place? Okay, let's level up. Riesel decided. Loki immediately got excited. Okay. Let's do this. With a burst of enthusiasm, she moved behind him, and in no time, the level up process was complete. Riesel Brynhart. Level 2. STR, I0. And, I0. Dex, I0. AGI, I0. Mag, I0. Lightweight, I. After leveling up, basic abilities were all reset to their initial values, and Riesel finally set off from level 1. The accumulated basic ability proficiency so far hadn't disappeared but existed in a latent form. This was why the higher the growth of basic abilities before leveling up, the stronger one became after leveling up. Only magic, skills, and development abilities wouldn't be reset, especially development abilities. No matter how high someone's level was, development abilities wouldn't reset, making it extremely difficult to improve them. Take Ace, for example. She acquired Hunter when she reached level 2 at the age of 8. However, despite practicing for many years until now, her Hunter only reached rank, advancing by just 2 ranks. Swordsman was even more extreme. Ace acquired it at level 4, and after several years, it was still staying at I rank. This illustrated how challenging it was to improve development abilities. It was not without reason that Loki considered Riesel's Endless to be abnormal and ridiculous. After all, it granted him 3 development abilities of the highest rank. Well, your presence always triggers some jaw-dropping growth, you know. Loki remarked with a pleased smile while patting his shoulder. Anyway, congratulations on becoming a level 2, kiddo. Upon hearing the congratulation from his goddess, Riesel smiled faintly and nodded. Chapter 37, The Depressed Elf. At this moment, the sun had already risen in the sky, illuminating the entire urban district of Orario. The liveliness within Twilight Manor was gradually increasing, and members were bustling around, making it no longer as desolate as it was initially. Riesel emerged from the Divine Room, receiving curious glances from several Familia members along the way. Needless to say, the news of his battle with the Irregular on the 6th floor had started to spread. However, he paid no attention to those looks. Instead, he pondered the words Loki had said to him when leaving the Divine Room. Looks like Lefiya's spending too much time on some confusing or minor issue. Wanna go see what's up with her? The goddess's sudden parting words left him stunned at the time. Since coming back yesterday, that girl's been visibly depressed. Riveria mentioned it to me, suggesting it might be better for you, the involved party, to talk to her. Loki added, smiling wryly. Leaving those words, she turned and went back to sleep, leaving him with no choice but to leave. Thinking about Lefiya, Riesel hesitated for a moment but ultimately decided to check on her. But he had no idea how to find her. As the base of Loki Familia, Twilight Manor was composed of many tall towers. Apart from the central tower, there were a total of 7 towers surrounding it. The lower halves of these variously shaped towers were interconnected, with only the circular courtyard surrounding the central tower standing independently. The upper halves had stone-built aerial corridors extending to other towers, allowing people to move between the towers. Facilities such as libraries and dining halls were scattered in different towers, without any order. Except for the central tower, the 7 towers were mainly divided into 3 for men and 4 for women. In other words, living areas for men and women were separate. If Riesel wanted to find Lefiya, the first choice was naturally to go to her room. This meant entering the living area for female members, giving him a somewhat uncomfortable and awkward feeling of entering a female dormitory. Maybe I should check in the public area first. Riesel tentatively decided on this. However, before he could start looking for Lefiya, he encountered 2 Familia's executives on the way. Hey, isn't this the very impressive rookie? Indeed. Like looking into a mirror, the Amazonas twin sisters, identical in appearance but different in body size and hairstyle, appeared on the way and coincidentally met Riesel. Miss Tiona, Miss Tioni. Riesel stopped and greeted the 2 executives with a head bow. Come in, don't be so formal. Tiona said with an innocent smile. Just call me Tiona. Call me Tioni too. Tioni said while sizing him up for a moment, a smile on her face carrying a hint of meaning. Captain values you a lot, I guess he thinks you'll soon climb into the executive positions. If that's the case, just call us by our names directly. As executives of Loki Familia and first-class adventurers unparalleled in Orario, even within their own Familia, most members held a respectful attitude towards Tiona and Tioni. This was the status of a first-class adventurer and the treatment that came with being the Familia executive. The 2 were not unaccustomed to the respectful attitude of others. However, it was evident that it didn't suit Riesel. Just the thought of his skill-called fool's obsession that broke the rules made Tiona and Tioni feel it was better not to regard him as an ordinary rookie. What are you up to? Tiona asked with a tilted head. Planning to head into the dungeon. I heard you just went through a fight with an irregular monster, weren't you still in bed yesterday? Tioni sighed. Getting out of bed today and planning to dive into the dungeon again, aren't you a bit too eager? It puts pressure on us, you know. The two sisters hadn't been spared from his adventurous spurs lately, but their words weren't meant to intentionally taunt him. Riesel noticed their concern and shook his head. I'm not planning to go into the dungeon today. Just looking for Lefiya. Lefiya? Tiona seemed surprised at the mention of the name. Come to think of it, you guys formed a party, right? Tioni realized. Yeah, Riesel nodded. Do you two know where she is? Seemingly, he asked the right people. Lefiya, I just saw her heading to the reception room. Tiona told him and added with a puzzled expression. But she seemed a bit out of spirits. Is she hungry or something? Who do you think she is, you? Tioni retorted without much kindness. Besides, if she's really hungry, she should be going to the dining room, not the reception room. You're right. Tiona suddenly enlightened and grinned, not feeling embarrassed at all about her sister's scolding. Instead, she appeared optimistic, giving off a lively and cheerful vibe. The reception room, hey. Riesel nodded thoughtfully. Then I'll go find her. Sure. Go ahead. The Amazonas sisters stepped aside, giving way to him. As he walked away, the two exchanged a silent glance, both deep in thought. Do you sense it, Tiona? Tioni asked in a low voice. Yet Tiona was somewhat less carefree than before as she stared at Riesel's back. His movements have become different, and the way he walks is somewhat unnatural. It's like a burst of power causing a lack of coordination. A very obvious sign of someone not yet accustomed to their newfound power. That's what it seems like. Tioni quietly said. Did this guy just level up? Probably, Tiona replied and nodded. After all, only a level up can cause such a sudden surge in power and make your body struggle to stay in sync. This guy clearly hasn't adapted to his current body yet. Having said that, the two fell silent once again. Only 7 days. Yet. The silent reflection made the atmosphere between the two feel a bit tense. Dungeon. Yep. Today's plans were quickly confirmed by the two sisters. However, both of them had a feeling. They felt that no matter how hard they tried, it might all be in vain since that rookie would quickly catch up. However, just sitting back and not putting in any effort wasn't an option for the two Amazonesses. Not to mention them, even the werewolf youth, who had just turned the corner and happened to catch a glimpse of the rookie, couldn't help but click his tongue. Boring. Bet left with a displeased remark, leaving the place. Twilight Manor, reception room. This room was dominated by shades of orange, with a dignified style, directly facing the corridor. Inside the room were several sofas and chairs that immediately hinted at their hefty price, and a round table covered with a tablecloth. The decor exuded a sense of luxury, ensuring that no matter the status of the guests, they wouldn't feel neglected. However, this reception room didn't quite seem like a dedicated space for entertaining guests. Instead, it appeared more like a leisure space for members of the Familia to relax. At this very moment, Lefiya was seated in a chair, sighing. She had been in this state for quite some time. Many Familia members who happened to witness her condition came up, expressing concern, but in the end, only received a somewhat reluctant smile from her. To avoid affecting others with her worries, Lefiya fled to this place. However, when alone, not only did it fail to improve her mood but also made her feel gloomier, even experiencing a hint of self-isolation. Someone like me. Lefiya's attractive lips muttered those somewhat self-deprecating words. But another voice suddenly interrupted. What's wrong with someone like you? Lefiya was startled at the sudden voice. It was only then that she noticed someone had entered the reception room and was standing right in front of her. That someone happened to be the one she was a bit hesitant to face. MMR. Riesel. Lefiya said while trembling with fear. Why do you look like I'm about to devour you? Riesel chuckled. If others see this, they might think I'm using my age to bully a senior. Sorry, Lefiya immediately looked apologetic. Relax, it's not that serious. Riesel looked at the still trembling Lefiya. What happened to you? Lefiya remained silent. Still thinking about yesterday. Riesel said casually as if yesterday's experience was not a life and death battle but rather a mere game. However, his attitude right now caused a conflict within Lefiya's heart. After a while, she took a deep breath and stood up. I'm sorry. Lefiya suddenly apologized and bowed deeply to him. Seeing this sudden action, Rizel awkwardly scratched his cheek. You're really bothered by yesterday's events, hey? He sighed tiredly and shortly afterwards spoke straightforwardly without hesitation. You feel useless because you couldn't help and could only watch from the sidelines, am I right? Hearing those blunt words, Lefiya's shoulders immediately trembled. Without a doubt, he hit the nail on the head. As she slowly raised her head, her face was filled with guilt and deep regret. Mr. Rizel encouraged me to use magic whenever I could, and yet, I couldn't be of any help at all and just stood there in a daze from start to finish. Even though we're supposed to be a party, and my level is even higher than yours, I just couldn't do anything useful. Someone like me is truly useless and incompetent. The more she spoke, the more she felt depressed. Chapter 38, Lefiya Voridis. Rizel might not be aware, but in the beginning, when Lefiya discovered that the Familia's top executives had arranged for her to form a party with him to explore the dungeon, she was determined to grow. She was well aware of her problem. Unlike the other Familia executives who started their careers as adventurers, accustomed to battling monsters and even engaging in intense life-or-death struggles from the beginning, she hailed from the school district. In simple terms, she was a top student who grew up in the ivory tower, and her thoughts and awareness greatly differed from adventurers who faced life and death every day after receiving their blessings. Before joining Loki Familia, she had grown up in a very stable environment without worrying about anything, and by the time she became an adventurer, she was already a high-class adventurer. In reality, she struggled to adapt to highly intense battles. Being a dedicated rearguard and having a somewhat nervous disposition, she was generally fine in battle. However, if any unexpected situation arose, her heart would tense up, nervous, and couldn't calm down for quite a while. For a mage, this was undoubtedly very dangerous. After all, mages primarily used magic as their primary combat method. Chanting and casting magic, these were the only things a mage could do. Chanting magic typically required a stable mentality and composure. Without these, how could one smoothly and flawlessly chant magic? When using magic, one needed a stable mentality, a calm heart, and a composed demeanor to keep chanting without panicking when monsters attacked them. This way, their mind could be refined into magic and cast successfully, annihilating monsters. Being a mage seemed like just staying in a safe place and casting magic from a distance, but in reality, it required a stronger heart than vanguards and midguards. In this aspect, she was undoubtedly a failure. She had lost her composure in battle more than once, causing the use of her magic to fail. Precisely because of this, in her heart, she felt unworthy of the attention from the Familia's top executives, and even more so, she couldn't live up to the name of a genius. Top executives like Finn, Riveria, and Gareth often comforted her. Even other executives such as Ace regarded her highly. They extended a helping hand without finding fault, allowing her to join their parties, but she still frequently got nervous to the point of forgetting to chant magic. Therefore, she always felt that she couldn't keep up with them, always dragging them down when she was with them. With this mindset, she agreed to form a party with Rizel, a level 1 rookie who had recently joined the Familia without complaint. Despite her level being higher than his, she didn't dare to consider herself a senior. Instead, she embarked on the adventure with the mindset of someone seeking guidance from him. Yes, she wanted to take this opportunity to truly grow, to correct her flaws. She valued this chance greatly. Becoming a party with the executives meant being a burden, and joining parties with same-level Familia members might cause trouble for them. In this situation, exploring with a rookie lower in level and trying out different combat approaches together, suited her purposes more. But, the results were disappointing. No, it was even worse than disappointing, her performance was undoubtedly at its lowest. Thinking about how Rizel had saved her multiple times yesterday, remembering her own panicked state, she felt extremely ashamed. During his life and death battle with the crocodile dragon, as a rearguard mage, she should have found an opportunity to cast magic and help him defeat the powerful monster. However, in the end, she just stood there in a daze, completely unresponsive, like a statue. On the other hand, Rizel, despite possessing less strength than the monster and being a rookie who had just started less than a week ago, never showed a trace of fear. Instead, he faced challenges heat and fearlessly, unafraid of life or death, putting on an unprecedented and unparalleled performance. That posture and that demeanor, even she had to admit that the impression and impact he left on her at that moment were unimaginably significant. At one point, she even saw the figure of someone she admired the most when she witnessed his struggle against the monster. In her heart, those two figures overlapped to some extent. In comparison, her performance was simply abysmal. Realizing this, after returning home, she fell into deep self-loathing, unable to free herself from it. Someone like me, no matter where I go, always ends up being a burden. Lefiya spoke with her head down, extremely frustrated. Mr. Riesel should form a party with more powerful Familia members so you won't be dragged down. At this point, her tone was not just frustrated but also carried a hint of self-deprecation and self-loathing. A heavy, oppressive silence settled in the reception room, making the atmosphere uncomfortably tense. Just when she was about to give in to the urge to escape, Riesel finally spoke. Lefiya, why did you become an adventurer? Riesel asked with a tranquil tone like a still lake. Upon hearing that question, Lefiya was slightly stunned and quickly lifted her head to look at his face. Riesel gazed directly at her face with a calm expression without any fluctuations. Lefiya was at a loss. Why did she become an adventurer? As she became silent again, Riesel continued. Some do it for her fortune. Some do it for her fame. Some do it for her power. Some do it for her survival. People who choose to become adventurers have their own reasons and desires. Otherwise, no one would choose a job where they could lose their lives at any moment. His voice was surprisingly serene, which gave an unexplainable feeling. What about you? What are you in it for? Lefiya was still at a loss. Can't come up with an answer. Riesel said with an understanding tone, unsurprised by her reaction. Yes, Lefiya involuntarily lowered her head again and murmured. I don't know why. Indeed, she couldn't express it. It felt like there was a reason, but that reason must be insignificant, or at least that was what she believed. Maybe you just haven't found a rock-solid reason to confidently tell others that you won't let them down or yourself down, a reason that makes you proud. Riesel spoke as if he could read her thoughts. But you know, it's okay, you'll find your own reason sooner or later. When you find that reason, you'll realize you can do things just like anyone else. After all, the only difference between you and me is right there. His words resonated deeply in Lefiya's ears. For some reason, she couldn't shake the feeling that she wouldn't forget these words, especially considering his calm expression as he delivered such impactful words to her. When there's a reason that forces you to do something, the courage you lack will surely come along. But never numbly go with the flow. You can be confused, you can be puzzled, but never numbly go with the flow. That's truly fearful. Riesel's words carried an indescribable power and significance. Unfortunately, Lefiya didn't have the chance to delve into the reasons behind it. You're still immature, that's a fact. However, I dare not say I'm mature either, so we're even. Riesel finally showed a hint of a smile. I think we should continue as a party like this. Do you have any other thoughts? Of course not. Lefiya quickly shook her head like a tambourine. After hesitating for a while, she trembled again. Can I really do this? Riesel didn't answer her question but just looked at her eyes calmly, conveying everything with his eyes. Seeing those serene and calm eyes, Lefiya took a deep breath. Right here and now, she once again made up her mind to grow. To avoid letting herself and her idol down, while simultaneously ensuring she didn't disappoint the young man before her, whose figure overlapped with the idol she admired the most. After parting ways with Lefiya, Riesel returned to his room to take his secondary weapon, a short sword. Because his main weapon broke when he fought the crocodile dragon, he could only use this for now. After grabbing the sword, he made his way to the courtyard. However, when he arrived, he found that someone else was already in this place. Whoosh! A swordswoman with golden hair wielded a silver sword, dancing gracefully and producing a continuous, sharp sound of cutting wind. Riesel stood silently, watching her performance for a while, but soon noticed that she had stopped her movements. Ace stopped swinging her sword, but she didn't sheath it. She just calmly stood there, turned her head, and looked at him, who had appeared in the courtyard. The two of them stared into each other's eyes, and for a moment, neither of them chose to speak. After silently staring at each other for a while, Ace finally opened her mouth. Want to practice together? As he heard her question, Riesel was slightly surprised. You're here to practice, right? Ace said while tilting her head slightly. To adapt to your new power. You noticed. Riesel remained silent for a while before saying with helplessness. It seems like I made it too obvious, Hey. Yes. Ace nodded. For someone else, it might not be a big problem, but your increased power is quite big. Your movements are noticeably uncoordinated and might affect your combat abilities. Riesel did achieve an unprecedented full SSS in all basic abilities this time. Before facing the crocodile dragon, the highest rank of his basic abilities was only B. However, after defeating it and undergoing a status update, all his basic abilities skyrocketed to SSS in one go. Combined with leveling up to level 2 and gaining a development ability called Lightweight, which was further boosted by Endless, his body after leveling up indeed needed some adjustments, to say the least. Want to practice together? Ace asked again. Sure. Riesel naturally had no objections and nodded heavily. Before long, the sound of swords clashing echoed in the courtyard. He continued to grow fiercely and rapidly. Just as his endless skill indicated, it seemed as if there was no end in sight to his growth. Chapter 39, The Goddess of Beauty. Orario, Babel. At the top of the tower that seemed to suppress the entrance to the dungeon like a lid, the highest floor was extravagantly decorated, equipped with everything one could imagine. The interior was lavish to the extreme, allowing a sweeping view of the entire city's district in the eyes of the room. Soon, a giant shadow pushed the door open and walked in. It was a huge beastman, with short, earth-red hair and boar ears, possessing a robust physical body resembling rock, standing over 2 meters tall. The beastman entered the high-class room as he was the only one allowed to freely pass in and out. He reached the deepest part of the room, facing a rectangular observation glass that occupied an entire wall. There, wrapped in a black sheer evening dress, with a slender yet voluptuous figure and waist-length silver hair, was a stunning goddess. Lady Freya. The beastman halted not far from the goddess, as if a devout believer, bowing respectfully to the beautiful goddess known as Freya. Otter. Freya didn't turn around, only swaying a cup of red wine while responding casually. Her voice was extremely sweet, like heavenly nectar or earthly wine. Even catching a hint of it gave the sensation of wanting to be intoxicated by it. What happened? Is there something you need? Freya inquired with her sweet voice, making the beastman known as Otter show even more reverence. I have something to report to you. Otter solemnly said. It's about a rookie from the Loki Familia. Hearing this, Freya finally took her gaze away from the beautiful scenery outside the window. Loki. Freya swayed the wine in her hand as if recalling or savoring something. After a while, she indifferently said, I have heard recently that her familia has recruited a rookie with an amazing talent. Yes. Otter said indifferently. I believe attention should be given to that rookie, so I came here to report. Oh. Freya suddenly became interested and smiled slightly. A child that can make you say something like that has piqued my curiosity. With that, she finally turned around. With this turn, as if all the light in the world gathered simultaneously on her body, the surroundings dimmed. This was only natural. Because Goddess Freya was exceptionally beautiful. As beings that came from heaven, gods generally possessed near-perfect appearances. Except for some deliberately existing in the world in the forms of the elderly or children, almost all gods had faces that could cause national disasters. And the beautiful appearance of Freya was exceptional even among these generally perfect gods. In this world, there were various gods of fire, gods of water, gods of war, or gods of death, controlling various concepts in various fields, with each god being unique. Among these numerous gods, the concept controlled by Freya was precisely the concept of beauty. She was a genuine goddess of beauty. Tell me, Freya gazed at Otter with her autumn-like beautiful eyes, her most powerful and loyal follower. What kind of child has caught your attention? At her question, Otter answered with a calm and steady voice. His name is Riesel Brynhart, a rookie who joined Loki Familia just over a month ago. He is a human, 17 years old this year, but has caused a huge stir in Orario several times and gained considerable fame. His eyes glowed with deep radiance as he explained. His growth speed was astonishing. In just over a month, he went from being an ordinary mortal who had never received a blessing to someone who achieved incredible feats repeatedly. In that short time, he leveled up from level 1, a low-class adventurer, to level 4, a second-class adventurer. The guild was so surprised that they sent people to Twilight Manor several times to verify. His explanation left even the goddess of beauty amazed. What? He leveled up from level 1 to level 4 in just over a month. Such an absurd piece of news would have made Freya think Otter was intentionally teasing her if she didn't know he couldn't joke like that. Even so, she remained somewhat skeptical. Does such a mortal really exist? Freya wondered, still in disbelief. No choice. Even the Sword Princess, who held the record for the fastest level up to level 2, took a whole year to achieve such a feat, becoming the most talented individual acknowledged by the world and various gods. Now someone was telling her that a rookie, who had received the blessing not long ago, shattered this record in just over a month and leveled up not just once, but several times during this short period. How could the goddess of beauty not be surprised? The incredibleness of such a feat was unimaginable, even for the gods. However, all of this was reality. 52 days ago, Riesel Brynhart officially joined Loki Familia and received a blessing. 45 days ago, Riesel Brynhart defeated an irregular known as Crocodile Dragon on the 6th floor and officially leveled up to level 2. 30 days ago, Riesel Brynhart, along with one party member, encountered a monster feast on the 16th floor during exploration. After a battle lasting several hours, he successfully defeated all the monsters and leveled up to level 3. And as of today, Riesel Brynhart has been confirmed to have gone alone to the 17th floor, awakened floor boss Goliath, and ultimately succeeded in defeating it, officially leveling up to level 4. Otter listed Riesel's feats as if they were treasures in a deep voice. All these feats have been officially acknowledged and recognized by the guild, and the guild has made them public. Hearing all of these, Freya fell silent. Because each of Riesel's accomplishments was enough to shock the world. 45 days ago, the irregular on the 6th floor was self-evident. After the inspection from the guild, it was confirmed that the crocodile dragon born at that time could be classified as a level 2 dragon species. To defeat such a monster at level 1 was truly incredible. Similarly, Monster Feast was also considered as irregular, a phenomenon commonly witnessed only from the 10th floor onwards. Generally, the number of monsters appearing on each floor of the dungeon was fixed. They wouldn't increase beyond a certain number, and when they decreased, new monsters would break through the dungeon walls. During this period, the interval between the birth of the next monster varied depending on the floor, but it never exceeded about a day. But Monster Feast was different. This was a phenomenon where numerous monsters were born instantly in the same area. Once this phenomenon occurred, even a place that was empty just a second ago would be filled with monsters in the blink of an eye, trapping adventurers in a life-or-death situation. Such a predicament typically occurred in the middle floors where level 2 monsters were prevalent. At that time, Riesel, who was also level 2, managed to engage in a death battle with Lefiya and successfully defeated all level 2 monsters. It was nothing short of a miracle. As for floor bosses, they were even more terrifying than irregulars. Monsters in the dungeon were usually born in no more than about a day, but some monsters required a specific cycle before spawning. These monsters appeared only after several weeks or even months and were restricted to specific floors. They not only possessed bodies that far exceeded the size of large species monsters but also exhibited unparalleled strength compared to other monsters on the upper floors, leaving adventurers and monsters on the upper floors in awe and fear. The guild officially named these monsters Monster Rex. However, adventurers usually called them floor boss. Their strength was speculated to be the level of monsters on the floor they were on, +2. In other words, if the other monsters on the floor were mostly classified as level 1, the floor boss would be on level 3. If the other monsters were classified as level 2, then the floor boss would be on level 4. Floor bosses were monsters that adventurers had to form a large party to challenge and conquer. The first floor boss in the dungeon was residing on the 17th floor, known as Goliath, a monster with a large body reaching 7 meters. Although Goliath was classified as a level 4 floor boss, due to its massive size, it was essentially an endurance and specialized monster. This floor boss could easily compete with level 5 adventurers in terms of end alone. It was impossible for a level 3 adventurer to single-handedly defeat such a monster without leveling up. Yet, Riesel did it. All of his deeds eventually create a stir in Orario, prompting the guild to send someone to Loki Familia to verify. Riesel Brynhart. Freya whispered softly, her eyes filled with an inexplicable radiance. Loki is still as fortunate as ever, actually finding such a child. I wonder how brilliant this child's brilliance is. Her sensual whisper did not shake Otter. How should we deal with this situation, Lady Freya? Otter asked respectfully. He came here and reported Riesel's situation truthfully for this reason. After all, Freya Familia was one of the strongest familias in Orario, along with Loki Familia. Loki Familia was both a competitor and a formidable rival with whom a clash was not surprising at any time. For this reason, he came to report to his goddess as soon as he received the news. Hearing Otter's question, Freya extended her slender fingers, tapped her cheek, and fell into thought. After pondering for a while, she finally spoke. Ensure everyone keeps a close eye on this child. If there's any news, report it to me right away. After saying that, a beautiful smile appeared on her stunning face. As for me, I'll find an opportunity to personally taste him myself. Chapter 40, Progression. Twilight Manor, Courtyard. At this moment, there were still people practicing in this place. Riesel and Ace were unleashing a vast display of sword slashes, engaging in an intense sword dance. Unlike before, today's sword dance not only surpassed any previous ones in intensity but also showcased a level of skill uncommon for both of them. Riesel seemed to have transformed, effortlessly moving his body, creating bursts of energy with each casual motion. His speed was enough to break the sound barrier. The sword in his hand sent out countless chilly sword slashes, resembling a storm of relentless attacks, ceaseless and boundless, an endless fast attack aimed at Ace. Faced with this new Riesel, Ace no longer confronted him with just her scabbard as she used to. Instead, she wielded her silver sword, desperate, maneuvering through the storm of sword edges that he weaved. She swiftly parried and struck back, with no trace of her previous calm demeanor in every move. In the relatively narrow courtyard, a swordsman and swordswoman fiercely battled, chasing each other at a terrifying speed. Their figures weaved through a flurry of sword glows and shadows, leaving traces on the ground. The atmosphere was completely disrupted, creating a scene that was soul-stirring, with the wind and dust in turmoil. Amazing! Lefiya, holding two towels, stood on the side while trembling in anxiety as she watched their battle truly pitiable. The sword clashes between Riesel and Ace had reached a point where onlookers were left awestruck. Ding! At a certain moment, with the fierce clash of their two swords, the two figures, chasing and intertwining at astonishing speed, finally separated. Riesel's figure kept retreating, moving back several meters. Ace, on the other hand, only took a step or two back, faring better than him. They stayed silent and looked into each other's eyes, maintaining a standoff, creating a tense atmosphere in the gradually calming air. It wasn't until after a while that the two finally broke the standoff, seemingly as if on cue, simultaneously sheathing their swords. Thanks for your hard work, Mr. Riesel. Miss Ace. Seeing them finally stop, Lefiya snapped back to reality and quickly approached, handing towels to Riesel and Ace. Thanks. Thank you. Riesel and Ace both expressed their gratitude and accepted the towels at the same time, their movements perfectly synchronized, as if looking into a mirror, giving off an incredible sense of understanding. Lefiya, whether feeling heartache or jealousy, puffed her cheeks slightly as she observed this scene. Unfortunately, neither Riesel nor Ace noticed her, their attention was focused on each other. Judging by your movements, you should be adapting quite well by now, right? Ace spoke with an indeterminate emotion in her voice. Not bad, Riesel said with a slight smile. Although the transitions between some moves still feel a bit unnatural, it's close enough. Now, all that's left is to familiarize myself with the current power of my body. That's good. Ace nodded while staring directly at his face. You've really become very strong now. Even though you just leveled up, you seem more powerful than many level 4 adventurers I know. Upon hearing her statement, Riesel maintained a calm expression on his face, but inside, he felt different. After over a month had passed since the Crocodile Dragons incident, he had progressed from a level 1 low-class adventurer to a level 4 second-class adventurer and was quite satisfied with the effort he had put into reaching this point. Even the protagonist in the original work took 4.5 months to go from level 1 to level 4, while Riesel managed to do it almost 3 months faster. If he wasn't satisfied with this achievement, he believed he would be tempting the wrath of the heavens. Moreover, whether leveling up from level 2 to level 3 or from level 3 to level 4, he fully cashed in on his potential, choosing to level up only after achieving SSS in all basic abilities. This approach resulted in a better potential compared to the original work's protagonist, not to mention ordinary adventurers. In addition, the development abilities choices of swordsman at level 3 and lightweight at level 2 significantly enhanced his power. Coupled with a month of frequent sparring with Ace, Riesel had acquired exceptional swordsmanship from her. Despite having just reached level 4, his power was already on par with the top level 4 adventurers. And this didn't even take magic into account. Considering magic, including the overpowered one like Ariel, Riesel could probably compete with level 5 first-class adventurers. This was evident from the fact that he could push Ace, a level 5 seasoned adventurer, back a step or two in a direct confrontation, unlike the surprise attack he launched over a month ago during a moment of her vulnerability. However, every advantage has its downside. Riesel's rapid improvements meant that every leveling up caused a surge in power that his body struggled to adapt to. Hence, the sparring sessions with Ace were crucial for him to acclimate to his current body's power. In summary, he had indeed grown significantly, getting much stronger. Although he still felt that his current self wasn't strong enough, achieving this level of advancement in just over a month still made him satisfied. Of course, this kind of progress, if seen through the eyes of Ace and Lefiya, who were equally eager to grow and get stronger, would leave both of them with complex feelings. Especially Lefiya, as Riesel's party member and witness to his struggles since level 1, admired him but also felt frustrated with herself. Mr. Riesel is already at level 4, yet I'm still at level 3. It's really embarrassing, Lefiya sighed in resignation. Ace, standing nearby, wore a serious expression as she felt an indescribable pressure from him. Even though she could currently outmatch Riesel slightly, witnessing his rapid growth at a rate bordering absurd, she felt that soon, he would catch up. After all, she was level 5, and with just one more level up, he would completely catch up to her. At that point, considering his displayed power, potential, and innate talent, could she still exceed him? The more Ace thought about it, the more tense and pressured she felt. Please don't say that, Riesel shook his head, addressing Lefiya. I only took advantage of some convenient skills. With your potential, you should be able to reach level 4 quickly, right? As far as he knew, Lefiya had already developed Mag to Crank. According to the leveling up rules, achieving a Drank in any basic ability would qualify her for a level up. She already had the qualifications, the only thing she lacked was an outstanding exploit to gain high rank Excelia, which wasn't too difficult for her to achieve. Given the existence of several first-class adventurers in Loki Familia, they could assist and support her in accumulating enough high rank Excelia, as long as she genuinely wished to level up. As long as Lefiya willed it, leveling up to level 4 wasn't that difficult. What was challenging was leveling up to become level 5, the starting point of first-class adventurers. To reach that level, mere exploits weren't enough. One must accumulate more high-rank Excelia and defeat stronger enemies than before. Exploits sufficient to propel one to level 5, even the level 6 top executives might not be able to assist in completing. It was precisely because of this reason that in Loki Familia, there were quite a few second-class adventurers at level 3 and level 4, but only 4 level 5 first-class adventurers. Probably because the high-rank Excelia required to reach level 5 wasn't something easily accumulated. I wonder how long it'll take for me to reach level 5. Riesel, while comforting Lefiya, was also pondering this in his heart. To reach level 2, he took 7 days. To reach level 3, he took 15 days. To reach level 4, he took 30 days. By this calculation, could he successfully reach level 5 before the 100 days of dimensional travel end? It seems I'll need to put in more effort than before. That was what Riesel's heart was thinking, something that would once again make Ace and Lefiya feel emotionally complicated. By the way, Mr. Riesel, Lefiya suddenly seemed to remember something and looked at him. What's up? Riesel snapped back to attention and faced her. Just now, before I came here, I bumped into Lady Riveria. She asked me to tell you that after the sparring session with Miss Ace, you must go visit Captain. Captain? Riesel puzzled. Does Captain need something from me? I don't know. Lefiya shook her head. But since it's Captain, there should be something important to discuss. Is that so? Riesel pondered, and shortly afterward nodded. Gotcha, then I'll go see him. Lefiya had no objections. Be careful on the road. Ace also spoke up. In front of the two girls, Riesel turned and walked into the manor while waving his hand. Is Miss Ace free now? Lefiya, seeing him leave, immediately became somewhat hesitant and shyly asked. Would you like to go out together? What a pity, her invitation was met with Ace's blunt refusal. No, I need to practice a bit more. Feeling the pressure and stimulated by Riesel's rapid progress, Ace had no other thoughts and just wanted to seize the time to get stronger. Lefiya's shy expression suddenly became forced, looking somewhat stiff and helpless, almost on the verge of tears. On the other side, Riesel was making his way through the corridor, entering the northern tower. Inside Twilight Manor, among the 3 towers designated for male use, Finn's private room and office were located in the northernmost tower, directly opposite of Manor's main entrance. Riesel, relying on memory, arrived at the room and knocked on the door. Knock, knock. Come in. Finn's response came immediately from behind the door, prompting Riesel to push open the double doors and step into the room. The sight before him was the office connected to Finn's private room. Being the office of the Familia's top executive and captain, the room was naturally quite spacious. The interior not only featured bookshelves covering an entire wall but also vibrant carpets and even an elongated grand clock, giving off a sense of steady warmth. Finn was seated at the back of the office, behind a large desk that seemed mismatched with his small stature. The office wasn't occupied solely by him. Riveria and Gareth, the other two top executives of the Familia, were also present. They all here. Riesel expressed some surprise inwardly. His instincts told him that something important might be about to happen.
Thanks for listening.